As the black cloud revolved faster and faster, more and more bolts of black lightning appeared within the black vortex at the center of the cloud, presenting a harrowing sight to behold. All of a sudden, a resounding boom rang out as a thick pillar of black light came crashing down from the center of the vortex, plummeting directly toward Han Li's cave abode. Right at his moment, a burst of bright gray light erupted out of the top of Han Li's cave abode before forming a gray mountain projection in the blink of an eye. The pillar of black light struck the mountain projection as soon as it took shape, and an earth-shattering boom rang out as the pillar of black light pierced straight through the projection before crashing into the cave abode down below. The entire secret area shuddered violently as countless cracks appeared all over all of the nearby mountains, and countless rocks came falling down like rain. After releasing the pillar of black light, the black cloud in the sky rapidly shrank down before vanishing altogether in just a few seconds. Everything returned to normal in the secret area, and it was as if the black cloud had never even appeared. After the black cloud faded, the massive golden formation that encompassed the entire secret area was also stabilized. Worm 3 made a hand seal, and the pillar of golden light around him vanished. An anxious look appeared on his face, and he flew toward Han Li's cave abode before the pillar of golden light had even completely faded. The scar-faced man was just about to join him when a thought seemed to have occurred to him, and he stopped in his tracks. Worm 3 appeared in front of Han Li's cave abode in a flash, but at this moment, the entire cave abode was enshrouded within several light barriers, making it impossible for Worm 3 to detect what was happening inside. He was very anxious to find out what was happening, but he didn't force his way into the cave abode. Only after a full 15 minutes had passed by did all of the light barriers recede, revealing the gate of the cave abode, which was already wide open. "Come in, fellow Taoist Worm 3, Han Li invited from within his cave abode. Worm 3 was slightly reassured after hearing the calm tone of Han Li's voice, and he immediately made his way inside. At this moment, Han Li was standing in the guest hall of his cave abode. His complexion was a little pale, and his aura was also slightly unstable. There was a black jade box sitting on the table in front of him, and even though the box's lid was tightly shut, there were still faint law power fluctuations emanating out from within. Worm 3's gaze immediately fell upon the jade box. "What you want is inside the box, fellow Taoist Worm 3, Han Li said with a faint smile as he made an inviting hand gesture. Worm 3 nodded in response, then drew the jade box into his grasp before carefully opening it after taking a deep breath. Inside the box was a black Longan-sized pill that was giving off translucent black radiance, and there was a black Tao mark on the pill that was giving off formidable law power fluctuations. Worm 3's eyes immediately lit up upon seeing this, while Han Li sat down with a faint smile on his face. "Fantastic! You truly are a man of your word, fellow Taoist Dragon 5, Worm 3 said as he closed the box and stowed it away before raising his head to look at Han Li. "I was very fortunate to have succeeded. I'm still not very well versed in the process of refining this origin void pill, so I was only able to refine a single one after exhausting all of the ingredients," Han Li replied with a shake of his head, seemingly not very happy with his own handiwork. "That's perfectly fine," Worm 3 said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Thank you for your understanding, fellow Taoist," Han Li said as he cupped his fist in a salute. Upon noticing Han Li's pale complexion, Worm 3 flipped a hand over to produce a red jade pill before offering it to him. "It looks like the pill refinement process was quite taxing on you. Here's a vial of vast heaven pills. They have exceptional restorative effects, and I'm sure they'll be useful to you." "Thank you, fellow Taoist," Han Li said with a nod as he accepted the jade pill. Through his spiritual sense, He could detect that there were several crimson pills inside the vial, every single one of which was enveloped in a layer of bright crimson light, and they were giving off astonishing spiritual power fluctuations, indicating that they were very precious pills. You're very much welcome, fellow Taoist Dragon 5. You've done me a huge favor here, so if anyone should be saying thanks, it should be me. This also serves as a test before you get to officially join the Reincarnation Palace, so congratulations on passing, Worm 3 said with a smile, then flipped a hand over to produce a crimson jade badge, out of which flew a streak of reed light that vanished into the mask on Han Li's face. The earthly list projection then emerged from Han Li's mask, and the number contribution points on the bottom now read 60. This was 10 more than the compensation that he had been promised, so it was a pleasant surprise. Thank you, fellow Taoist Worm 3, Han Li said. Now that I've completed the mission, I'll be free to do whatever I please for the next 1,000 years, right? Of course. Do you have any plans, fellow Taoist Dragon 5? Worm 3 asked. I just obtained the 4th level of the spirit refinement technique, so I naturally plan to return to my cave abode to cultivate, Han Li replied in a candid fashion. If you insist on leaving, then I won't stop you. This is a secret base of our reincarnation palace, and I can assure you that it's a safe location. If you ever need to take shelter from something or someone, you can come here at any time. This is the access badge, Worm 3 said as he offered a black badge to Han Li. Han Li accepted the badge, but a wry smile then appeared on his face as he said, Unfortunately, I still don't possess the ability to pass through the soul-stirring winds on my own. My apologies, I should have considered that. Here is a wind shelter bead for you. This will allow you to travel safely through the soul-stirring winds, and you can have my personal communication formation plate as well. If you encounter any problems, you can contact me directly, and I'll be sure to lend you my assistance as long as your request is within the realm of my capabilities, Worm 3 said as he offered a black bead and a black formation plate to Han Li. The bead was identical in appearance and aura to the one that Wildcat 16 had used, while the black formation plate was giving off rings of black light, with countless black runes surging over its surface like stars in the night sky. Thank you, fellow Taoist, Han Li said as he stowed the 2 items away. Shortly thereafter, a streak of azure light flew out of the secret area. A spatial exit appeared amid a flash of black light, and the streak of azure light flew into it before vanishing without a trace. Meanwhile, Worm 3 stood on the Black Mountain, watching as Han Li departed with a contemplative look on his face. Right at this moment, the scar-faced man emerged behind him amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. Are you not planning to bring him along on this trip into the Immortal abode? Perhaps his ability to refine origin void pills will be useful to us, the scar-faced man said. He's only just become a reincarnation disciple, so we still don't know if he's completely reliable. This is a very important mission, and it's best to be more cautious, Worm 3 replied. While we do have a void origin pill now, we still have a severe shortage of capable personnel. Bailey Yan and Taoist Hu Yen have both gone missing, so we don't even have anyone that can directly oppose Zio Jinhin, the scar-faced man said with a concerned expression. According to my knowledge, Bailey Yan should still be alive. Now that the emergence of the Infernal Frost Immortal Palace is imminent, he'll be sure to appear as long as he still harbors ambitions of reaching the high zenith stage. As for Zio Jinhin, let's do our best to avoid direct confrontation with him and have the Vast Flow Palace and the Dawn Fall sect deal with him, Worm 3 said. All of a sudden, a thought occurred to the scar-faced man and he said, By the way, I've just received word that a strange person has appeared near Red Moon Island. Who is it? Worm 3 asked. It's a silver-robed woman with a giant golden beetle steed. We don't know who she is, but she appears to be a golden immortal, the scar-faced man replied. A silver-robed woman with a golden beetle. I don't recall anyone of that description in the top 3 sects of our immortal region. If she's appeared near Red Moon Island, then she's most likely targeting the Infernal Frost Immortal Manor as well, Worm 3 mused. I've already sent some people to follow her as a safety precaution, but I'm sure she won't be able to have any substantial impact on her own. Now that we have an Origin Void pill, we can proceed with our original plan, so I have to go and make some preparations, the scar-faced man said. Before Worm 3 had a chance to reply, a vast expanse of black light erupted out of the scar-faced man's body, following which he vanished into thin air. Worm 3 didn't linger much longer either, flying away as a streak of light. Meanwhile, Han Li had already left the secret area, and he was faced with a boundless expanse of soul-stirring wind. Instead of immediately summoning the wind shelter bead, he raised a hand to conjure up an azure light barrier around his body, keeping out the surrounding soul-stirring winds. Even though the soul-stirring winds were kept at bay, the ghastly noises they produced were still able to seep in through the azure light barrier. Han Li stood with his hands clasped behind his back, and he listened to these harrowing sounds for a while before giving a slight nod. At the moment, his spiritual sense was extremely stable, completely unaffected by the sounds outside, so it appeared that the spiritual sense crisis was well and truly behind him, at least for the time being. In the next instant, he swept a sleeve through the air, and a miniature gray mountain flew out of his sleeve. This was none other than the integrated 5 Extremes mountain, and he swept his spiritual sense over it momentarily before giving a pleased nod. He had only attracted a single pill tribulation following his successful refinement of the Origin Void pill, and the mountain had been able to withstand it with ease. This served as further confirmation to him that this treasure was indeed able to ward off pill tribulations better than all other immortal treasures. As for the pale complexion and unstable aura he had displayed at the end, that had merely been a facade to fool Worm 3. On top of that, what he had said about using up all of the pill refinement ingredients was also untrue. There were still 7 batches of ingredients left in his storage bracelet, and he was planning to use them to refine some more Origin Void pills so that he could study them. He couldn't shake the feeling that these Origin Void pills were somehow connected to Tao pills, and perhaps uncovering the nature of this connection would help him in his future pill refinement. Having already successfully refined 1 Origin Void pill, Han Li was quite confident that he would be able to refine at least 1 more with the remaining ingredients in his possession. This time, he was going to see exactly what was so special about these pills. Having decided on this course of action, he flipped a hand over to summon the wind shelter bead, then injected some immortal spiritual power into it, and it immediately released a burst of black ripples that spread outward in all directions to scatter the surrounding soul-stirring winds. He turned and cast his gaze deep into the soul-stirring winds, as a contemplative look appeared in his eyes. He was quite curious about what lay deep within the soul-stirring winds, and now that his spiritual sense crisis was behind him, he was considering exploring the area. However, he then quickly shook his head to rid himself of that idea as he flew away toward the black wind sea as a streak of azure light. A day and a night later, Han Li reappeared in the sky above a certain region of the black wind sea, and he stowed his wind shelter bead away as he heaved a faint sigh of relief. Even though the soul-stirring winds were no longer able to affect him thanks to the wind shelter bead, it was still quite an uncomfortable experience flying through them for an extended period of time. Right at this moment, a thought seemed to have occurred to him, and he flipped a hand over to produce his crimson mask before putting it on. After that, he made a hand seal, and a projection of the mission's platform emerged from the mask. After taking a moment to inspect the missions that he had released, an elated look appeared on his face, and he summoned a small pouch of immortal origin stones that he placed onto the vortex at the center of the mission's platform while making a hand seal. Moments later, those immortal origin stones had turned into 7 or 8 different types of materials, namely 2 spirit plants, 2 demon beast materials, and the rest were all crystals of different colors. These were all ingredients required to refine the golden soul pill, and he wasn't expecting to gather all of them so quickly. Hanli carefully examined these materials, and after ensuring that there was nothing wrong with them, he categorized them before stowing them away one by one. The golden soul pill refinement process wasn't very complex, and given his current pill refinement skills and the trump card that was the mantra treasured axis, one batch of ingredients was sufficient. After doing all of that, Hanli flew away as a streak of azure light in an unhurried fashion. Even though he had told Worm 3 that he was going to begin cultivating the spirit refinement technique, he wasn't actually planning to begin right away. Now that he had temporarily overcome his spiritual sense crisis, his top priority was naturally to make a breakthrough to the golden immortal stage. Even though he had joined the reincarnation palace and become a so-called reincarnation disciple, he was still being hunted by the northern glacial immortal palace, and his new status as a reincarnation disciple would most likely only make him even more of a wanted fugitive in the immortal palace's eyes. In order to weather this storm, he had to do everything in his power to advance his own cultivation base before he considered anything else. With the golden soul pill all but obtained, he would have no problems undergoing the spiritual evolution process. So the only obstacle in his way right now was that final immortal acupoint. It certainly sounded simple, but this was the very same hurdle that had stood firm in the face of countless late true immortal cultivators in the past. Hanli couldn't help but heave a faint sigh as this thought occurred to him. He had been constantly searching for ways to make breakthroughs to the golden immortal stage, and that included trying to find the complete cultivation art for the great universe origin arts. He had released multiple missions in the Transient Guild alone, searching for any methods that could help him make a breakthrough or open that final immortal acupoint, and the rewards offered for those missions were all quite substantial, but there had been no responses thus far. Hanli's brows furrowed slightly as a determined look appeared on his face, and he made a hand seal, upon which the crimson mask on his face released a layer of crimson light to envelop his entire body. In the next instant, the crimson light faded, and he had taken on the form of a square-faced middle-aged man with bushy brows. Immediately thereafter, he made a hand seal, and the speed of his flight increased by roughly twofold as he flew directly toward Black Wind City. However, he had only flown less than 100,000 kilometers when he suddenly stopped in his tracks. A burst of thunderous rumbling rang out from the sea down below, and the calm surface of the sea suddenly began to churn violently as enormous waves swept forth in all directions, clashing against one another to cause a deafening commotion. Additionally, the surrounding space had also begun trembling slightly, and Hanli raised an eyebrow upon seeing this. "What's going on?" This earthquake-like disturbance felt like an eruption of energy that had been accumulating for a long time, and it was certainly not a commonplace occurrence in the Black Wind Sea. Hanli looked down at the sea for a while longer before withdrawing his gaze and continuing onward. In a region of the sea near Black Wind Island, the area was littered with coral, upon which grew a type of crimson seaweed. Looking down from above, it was as if this area were a massive go board that was riddled with countless crimson go stones. This area had been named the Go Board Sea, and it was millions of kilometers away from Black Wind Island. On top of that, it deviated away from all of the main waterways, so it was also a very sparsely populated area. The world's origin chi here was quite rich, and there was also an abundance of ore resources on the seabed. On top of that, there were many demon beasts residing in the area, several species of which possessed very precious demon cores and materials, so there were many cultivators who frequently visited the area on hunting trips. There were similar places all over the Black Wind Sea, so this wasn't a rare sight. After all, in the context of the entirety of the vast Black Wind Sea, the islands that were inhabited by cultivators only made up a tiny area, while the rest of the region was still predominantly inhabited by demon beasts. While it was a common occurrence for cultivators to hunt for demon beasts, it was also not uncommon to see cultivators being slain and devoured upon encountering demon beasts too formidable for them to handle. At this moment, there were several human cultivators on the Go Board Sea that were at risk of suffering this exact grisly fate. It was a group of 3 cultivators consisting of a middle-aged man with a coarse beard, a red-robed young woman, and a black-robed young man controlling an azure flying boat treasure that was racing through the air. They were being pursued by a ball of blue light, and it was unclear what type of demon beast the ball of light contained, but there were arcs of blue lightning flashing over its surface. All 3 cultivators were at the deity transformation stage, and the azure flying boat was riddled with complex spirit patterns while moving at a decent speed, indicating that it was an outstanding treasure. However, the ball of blue light was slightly faster than the azure flying boat, and it was gaining on the 3 human cultivators with each passing second. Before long, the distance between them had been reduced to less than 10 kilometers. "We won't be able to get away at this rate," the man with the coarse beard said in an urgent voice. "What do we do then? This is already as fast as the flying boat can go," the red-robed young woman said in a panicked voice. There was also an urgent look on the black-robed young man's face, but he appeared relatively calm and collected in contrast with his 2 companions. "Fellow Taoist Mu, I recall that you possess a true lightning talisman. Use that to attack this lightning worm beast, and I'll simultaneously unleash my extreme yin dome to trap it. Perhaps that'll buy us enough time to get away," the man with the coarse beard urged. "That won't work," the red-robed young woman immediately said with a shake of her head. "Your extreme yin dome is a yin attribute treasure that's completely suppressed by this lightning worm beast's lightning power, so you won't be able to buy much time at all. I know, but we have no other alternatives right now. The longer we manage to keep that thing at bay, the greater our chances of survival will become. If we let that thing catch up to us, we'll be torn to shreds in an instant. Hurry, fellow Taoist Mu," the man with the coarse beard urged. The black-robed young man gritted his teeth as he flipped a hand over to produce a purple talisman. There were arcs of purple lightning flashing over the talismans, and even though it hadn't been activated yet, the black-robed young man's 2 companions were already shuddering in the face of its power. The black-robed young man swept a hand through the air, and the purple talisman immediately shot forth as a bolt of purple lightning that hurtled directly toward the ball of blue light. A burst of thunderous rumbling rang out as the purple talisman exploded into around a dozen bolts of purple lightning, all of which were as thick as water vats, and they were converging toward the ball of blue light with astonishing power. The ball of blue light instantly fell away to reveal the demon beast inside, and it was a blue demon beast that was over 100 feet in length and resembled a giant python. However, there wasn't a single scale on its body. Instead, its body was split up into numerous segments, giving it the appearance of an enormous blue worm. After shattering the ball of blue light, the thick bolts of lightning struck the lightning worm beast's body with tremendous force, causing it to let loose a sharp screeching sound akin to the crying of an infant. A series of wounds were inflicted onto its body, and blue blood came pouring out from within, but the wounds weren't very deep at all and were only minor injuries. However, the lightning worm beast was infuriated by the attack, and a series of thick bolts of blue lightning instantly emerged over its body to keep the bolts of purple lightning at bay. Right at this moment, a huge black dome-shaped net appeared in the sky above the lightning worm beast, then descended upon it. The net was glittering and translucent in appearance with wisps of black flames on its surface, but it was giving off an extremely cold and forbidding aura. The net descended upon the lightning worm beast before tightening forcefully to bind the beast, and a series of black gashes instantly appeared all over its body. Plumes of smoke rose up out of the gashes, and the lightning worm beast's screeching instantly became even more shrill and high-pitched as it stopped in its tracks. "We have to go, hurry," the man with the coarse beard yelled. The red-robed young woman hurriedly made a hand seal while opening her mouth to release a ball of crimson light, which vanished into the azure flying boat. All of the spirit patterns on the flying boat lit up in unison, releasing bursts of azure light as it shot forward through the air at an incredible speed. Meanwhile, the lightning worm beast was thrashing around violently inside the black net. At the same time, a gash appeared on the front of its body, then opened up to reveal a terrifying mouth, inside of which were 2 rows of sharp white fangs. Immediately thereafter, all of the blue lightning all over the lightning worm beast's body converged toward its mouth, forming an enormous ball of blue lightning in the blink of an eye before being blasted forward with tremendous force. A string of earth-shattering explosions rang out as blue lightning erupted in all directions, instantly tearing the black net apart. The man with the coarse beard let loose an involuntary groan, and blood began to trickle down from the corner of his lips as his complexion turned as pale as a sheet. "Uncle," the red-robed young woman exclaimed in a concerned voice. "I'm fine, don't worry about me. Hurry, we need to get out of here," the man with the coarse beard yelled. The red-robed young woman gritted her teeth as she shifted her gaze away from the man with the coarse beard, and she began making a rapid string of hand seals to further accelerate the flying boat. Meanwhile, the black-robed young man beside her swept a sleeve through the air, sending a burst of gentle azure light flying into the body of the bearded man. The bearded man's complexion instantly improved slightly, and he gave the black-robed young man a grateful nod. Right at this moment, the vast expanse of blue lightning faded to reveal the lightning worm beast once again. The injuries on its body seemed to have worsened a little, and many parts of its body were charred black and stained with blue blood. However, it then let loose a loud roar, and arcs of blue lightning reappeared over its body. At the same time, all of the blue blood on its body was set alight, transforming into a burst of blue flames. The flames and lightning intertwined to form a vast expanse of dense blue mist that surged around the beast's giant body, and in the next instant, the blue mist abruptly exploded before vanishing into thin air along with the lightning worm beast itself. The black-robed young man had been paying close attention to the lightning worm beast this entire time, and his expression instantly changed drastically upon seeing this. "Be careful." The red-robed young woman and the bearded man had also been keeping tabs on the beast with their spiritual sense, and they were quite alarmed by its sudden disappearance as well. Before the 3 of them had a chance to do anything, a burst of spatial fluctuations suddenly emerged in front of the flying boat, following which a vast expanse of blue mist appeared, then swooped down upon the flying boat, instantly inundating the trio on board. As soon as the flying boat fell into the sea of blue mist, it was immediately stopped cold in its tracks as if it had flown into a swamp. The 3 cultivators on board also felt a tremendous burst of invisible force constricting around them, and they weren't completely immobilized, but much to their alarm, their movements were severely restricted. Immediately thereafter, the giant lightning worm beast appeared in front of them, and its body had swelled even further, resembling a small mountain. At the same time, it was giving off an immense spatial tempering stage aura. A hint of despair appeared in the eyes of both the red-robed young woman and the bearded, and a grim look had also appeared on the black-robed young man's face. The lightning worm beast opened its cavernous mouth, releasing around a dozen thick bolts of blue lightning that surged toward the flying boat at an astonishing speed. At the same time, the surrounding sea of blue mist churned violently as it enveloped the trio of cultivators on board. The sea of blue mist then transformed into an enormous ball of mist that churned and swirled with tremendous force while arcs of lightning flashed within it, and it was unclear what was happening inside. Right at this moment, the ball of blue mist abruptly fell still, then bulged outward before exploding with a resounding boom to reveal the trio of cultivators inside. At this moment, the black-robed young man was holding a giant fiery crimson sword that was several dozen feet in length. The sword was burning with scorching crimson flames and giving off terrifying spiritual power fluctuations. His face had turned as pale as a sheet, while his clothes were in tatters, and blood was trickling down from the corners of his lips. The bearded man and the red-robed young woman were in even worse condition. Both of them had had their clothes torn to shreds, while their faces had turned deathly pale. In particular, the bearded man's body was soaked in blood, and his left arm had been severed at the elbow. The azure flying boat was nowhere to be seen, and the wreckage of a spirit boat could just barely be made out within the sea of mist behind the trio. The flames on the surface of the giant fiery sword that the black-robed young man was wielding flashed momentarily before rapidly shrinking down, transforming into a crimson spirit talisman that was around half a foot in size, with a fiery sword design emblazoned on its surface. The talisman was giving off formidable fear-attribute spiritual power fluctuations, but they were extremely unstable. All of a sudden, the talisman burst into flames and was incinerated into ashes in the blink of an eye. A pained look appeared in the black-robed young man's eyes upon seeing this, but there was no time to grieve over the talisman as he yelled, "Run!" Immediately thereafter, he flew away into the distance as a streak of azure light, and the bearded man and the red-robed young woman also mustered what little remained of their strength as they flew away as quickly as they could. However, they weren't able to make it very far before the lightning worm beast re-emerged from the blue mist behind them. A long gash had appeared on its lower abdomen, and the wound was bleeding profusely. It was not an injury to be scoffed at, but overall, the beast was in far better condition than the trio of human cultivators. Even though its prey was getting away, the lightning worm beast didn't appear to be worried at all, and a hint of mockery appeared in its eyes. All of a sudden, the surrounding blue mist enveloped its entire body, and it set off in pursuit of the trio of the cultivators at an incredible speed. All three of the human cultivators were carrying severe injuries, so they were flying far slower than before, but the speed of the lightning worm beast hadn't diminished in the slightest, and the distance between them quickly began to shrink. The trio of cultivators were extremely anxious, but there was nothing that they could do. Before long, the gap between them had already been closed down to less than 5 kilometers. At this point, their magic power reserves were close to running dry, and none of them had any more powerful treasures up their sleeves, so the situation was looking very dire. Right at this moment, a streak of azure light suddenly appeared on the distant horizon out of nowhere, and it was approaching them at a rapid speed. The enormous aura emanating out of the streak of azure light far exceeded that of the trio of cultivators, and the lightning worm beast behind them. The despair on the faces of the three cultivators instantly turned to hope and elation, and the three of them yelled out in unison, "Save us, Senior!" The streak of azure light slowed down slightly, and the trio of cultivators were ecstatic to see this. A hint of fear flashed through the lightning worm beast's eyes at the sight of the streak of azure light, but as it turned its gaze back to its prey, the fear in its eyes was instantly replaced by a vicious gleam. All of a sudden, it stopped cold in its tracks before opening its mouth, and countless arcs of blue lightning appeared within the sea of mist before converging rapidly toward its mouth, forming a giant ball of lightning that was several hundred feet in size in the blink of an eye. The ball of lightning then shot forth toward the trio of cultivators, while the lightning worm beast turned and fled toward the distance with the sea of blue mist surging around it. The ball of lightning was extremely fast, and it looked as if it were about to swallow up the trio of cultivators in the blink of an eye. A cold harumph rang out from within the streak of azure light, immediately following which a pillar of azure light that was as thick as a bucket descended out of the heavens to strike the ball of lightning. The pillar of azure light pierced through the ball of lightning with ease, and the lightning worm beast was terrified to see this. The sea of mist around it churned violently as it fled into the distance at even faster speed, only for another pillar of azure light to shoot out of the streak of azure light. The pillar of azure light was far faster than the lightning worm beast, catching up to it in a flash before transforming into a giant streak of azure sword chi that was several thousand feet in length. The sea of blue mist was instantly torn apart to reveal the lightning worm beast inside. The beast had stopped cold in its tracks, and a gash was running all the way down its body. In the next instant, its enormous body split up into two halves, and a vast expanse of blue blood interspersed with internal organs rained down onto the sea below. The trio of cultivators had all stopped in their tracks and were observing the unfolding situation with awestruck expressions. Only then did the streak of azure light in the air fade, to reveal a square-faced middle-aged man. The trio of cultivators exchanged a glance with one another, then hurriedly flew toward the middle-aged man before extending deep, respectful bows. "Thank you for saving our lives, Senior." The fact that he was able to slay the lightning worm beast so easily indicated that he was at least a body integration cultivator, and he could even be a grand ascension cultivator, so they had to treat him with the utmost respect. The middle-aged man took a glance at the trio, and his gaze lingered momentarily on the black-robed young man as he asked, "Are you all cultivators of Black Wind Island?" "That's right. We reside on Black Wind Island and I grew up in Black Wind City, so I'm very familiar with everything there. If you need anything, I'd be happy to be of service, Senior," the black-robed young man immediately replied. "You sound like a guide," the middle-aged man remarked with a faint smile. "Truth be told, I did work as a guide for some time in the past," the black-robed young man replied with a slightly embarrassed smile. "What's your name?" the middle-aged man asked. "My name is Muzu. These two are Fang Zai and Fang Wei," the black-robed young man replied in a respectful manner. The middle-aged man raised an eyebrow upon hearing this, and he didn't say anything in response. The man was none other than Han Li, who had finally arrived near Black Wind Island after around a month of travel. He was certainly not expecting to meet Muzu here, and if it weren't for the fact that they were acquaintances, he wouldn't have stopped to save them. After all, it was very common for cultivators to perish during battles against demon beasts. Back when they parted ways, Muzu had only been at the core formation stage, yet he had since reached the deity transformation stage, and even though he had benefited from the spirit stones and cultivation arts bestowed upon him by Han Li, this was still quite an impressive rate of improvement. Muzu naturally hadn't identified him, and he had no intention of revealing his identity to Muzu either. Muzu's trio was rather puzzled by Han Li's silence, but they didn't dare to interrupt him, so they could only stand together in silence. "This place is not very safe. I just so happen to be on my way to Black Wind City, so I'll take you there," Han Li said. He patted his storage pouch as he spoke, and a ball of azure light flew out from within, forming an intricate palm-sized spirit boat that resembled an azure bird. The flying boat then rapidly swelled to over 100 feet in length, and 4 furry azure wings appeared on either side of the boat amid a flash of azure light. They resembled the wings of a fledgling, and they were flapping rapidly to keep the flying boat aloft. "Wow, it's so adorable!" the red-robed young woman couldn't help but exclaim. The bearded man was currently attending to his own injuries, and he immediately turned to the young woman with a warning glare upon hearing this. The red-robed young woman immediately realized her mistake. It would have been appropriate for her to praise this senior's flying boat as profound, but calling it adorable was not very appropriate at all, and she hurriedly lowered her head as a faint blush appeared on her face. "It's all right, come on board," Han Li said with a warm smile. Mu Zhu and the red-robed young woman immediately obliged, flying onto the boat, while the bearded man took a hesitant glance at Han Li, then looked back at the demon beast carcass down below as he said, "Please pardon me for my rudeness, senior, but this lightning worm beast carcass—" "It's fine. I have no use for this carcass, so if you want it, then you can have it," Han Li said in an indifferent voice. "Thank you, senior." The bearded man was ecstatic, and he extended a respectful salute toward Han Li, then flew down before dismembering the lightning worm beast's carcass in a well-rehearsed fashion. He didn't dare to delay for too long, so he only harvested several important materials before flying back. Han Li made a hand seal, and he was just about to spur the flying boat into action when the surrounding sea suddenly began to tremble. He cast his gaze downward to discover massive waves sweeping over the nearby sea, amid bursts of loud rumbling. At the same time, dense smoke began to rise up from an uninhabited island hundreds of kilometers away, and a thick pillar of crimson magma erupted into the heavens. Mu Zhu's trio were quite alarmed to see this, but Han Li remained calm and collected, so they didn't dare to say anything. Despite Han Li's lack of reaction, he was feeling rather intrigued. On the way to Black Wind Island, he had run into disasters like tsunamis and earthquakes quite frequently. Such disasters had taken place in the Black Wind Sea in the past as well, but definitely not this frequently. After observing the situation for a while, he withdrew his gaze before making a hand seal, and the flying boat began to radiate dazzling azure light, while the wings on either side of it swelled to several times their original size. Immediately thereafter, the flying boat shot forth as a streak of azure light at an incredible speed, vanishing into the distance in the blink of an eye. Do you know what the situation on Black Wind Island is like at the moment? Is the conflict between Black Wind Island and Azure Feather Island still ongoing? Han Li asked in a casual manner. Ever since these natural disasters began taking place all over the Black Wind Sea, a temporary truce was called between Black Wind Island and Azure Feather Island, Mu Zhu replied. Are you referring to disasters like this tsunami? Han Li asked as he raised an eyebrow. That's correct, Mu Zhu replied with a nod. Han Li nodded with a contemplative expression upon hearing this, but he didn't say anything, and Mu Zhu's trio didn't dare to speak without being spoken to, so the 4 of them traveled in silence. It didn't take long for them to reach Black Wind City, and they stopped somewhere outside the city. Thank you for saving our lives, Senior. May we have the honor of knowing your name. We'll be sure to remember it for as long as we live, Mu Zhu said in a grateful manner on behalf of the trio as they disembarked from the flying boat. There's no need for that. I just so happened to be passing by, so I didn't have to go out of my way to save you. Cultivation is important, but always remember that you only have one life, Han Li said. After that, he didn't wait for the trio to say anything before flying toward Black Wind City. The 3 of them watched as Han Li departed, and after he had disappeared out of sight, the bearded man turned to Mu Zhu as he said, "Fellow Taoist Mu, It was all thanks to those two talismans of yours that we were able to survive until that senior came to save us. So rest assured, we'll split the spirit stones from selling the lightning worm beast's materials evenly among the three of us." Mu Zhu nodded in response, then cast his gaze in the direction that Han Li had departed in with a contemplative look in his eyes. "What is it, fellow Taoist Mu?" the red-robed young woman asked. "It's nothing. Let's go," Mu Zhu replied with a smile, then began flying toward the city. At the same time, he was thinking to himself that the senior from earlier struck him with a sense of familiarity. However, he was unable to recall where he had met this senior before. The protective formation of Black Wind City had already been activated, and Han Li was quickly granted entry into the city after submitting an entrance fee. He didn't linger on the outskirts of the city, instead flying directly toward the center of the city. He stopped on a main street in Black Wind City, at the end of which was a huge plaza where the Black Wind City teleportation pagoda was situated. He cast his gaze toward the surrounding shops, upon which his brows furrowed slightly. This was already the most prosperous area in Black Wind City, but there still weren't many people on the streets. Business in the shops that lined the streets was also suffering as a result, and this was very different from how the city had been during his last visit. He thought back to what Mu Zhu had told him about the frequent occurrence of natural disasters of late, and with that in mind, he made his way into a nearby shop. The shopkeeper immediately approached Han Li with a warm smile as he said, "Welcome, esteemed customer. How can we help you today? Our shop may not be very large, but we have a huge range of wares, and you definitely won't be disappointed." The shopkeeper was a short and portly golden-robed man, and Han Li casually purchased several rare spirit plants from the shop. After paying for the spirit plants, he struck up a conversation with the shopkeeper. "I've been to Black Wind City several times in the past, and on those occasions, the city had been quite prosperous. Why is it that it seems to have fallen into a recession since then?" "It's because of all of the recent natural disasters. For some reason, there's been a great deal of unrest in the entire Black Wind Sea of late, and I've heard that many islands have been destroyed outright. Nowadays, all islands are beginning to go into lockdown, and even though people are still free to come and go from Black Wind Island, business has naturally suffered as a result of the current social climate," the shopkeeper replied with a resigned expression. "Why have the natural disasters suddenly become so frequent?" Han Li asked as his brows furrowed slightly. "No one seems to know the reason why. There are some rumors that say this is caused by unrest in the marine spirit veins, and some have also said that an astonishingly powerful treasure is about to emerge. There are even some who speculate that this is a sign that the Black Wind Sea is about to meet its destruction, but it's impossible to say if any of these theories have any degree of truth to them," the shopkeeper replied. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. All of these theories sounded quite absurd. "Setting that aside for now, do you know when the teleportation formation connected to the outside world will be running next?" Han Li asked. His primary objective for coming to Black Wind City this time was to leave the Black Wind Sea and try his luck in the outside world. After all, he had determined that it appeared implausible for him to stay in the Black Wind Sea and wait for a way to reach the golden immortal stage to fall onto his lap. "If you want to go to the outside world, then I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. After the last time the teleportation formation was used over 10 years ago, Island Master Lu Jun declared that it was going to be closed to 1,000 years. The shopkeeper replied with a shake of his head. 1,000 years? What is the reason for this?" Han Li asked as his brows furrowed slightly. "I don't know, but I'm sure Island Master Lu has his reasons," the shopkeeper replied with a resigned shrug. "I see," Han Li mused as he cupped his fist in a parting salute toward the shopkeeper, then turned to make his way out of the shop. After emerging from the shop, he walked along the street for a while before stepping into another shop. There was no reason for the shopkeeper to lie to him, but he had to confirm that what he had been told was true. Before long, he emerged from this shop as well with a grim expression, then made his way into another shop. Close to an hour later, Han Li was standing on a certain street. He had visited around a dozen shops of different sizes, and the information that he had received was identical. The teleportation formation couldn't be used anytime soon, and Lu Jun had made this decision very abruptly without providing any explanation. Han Li stood still for a moment with a dark look on his face, before flying away in the direction of the Island Master's Manor. The Island Master's Manor hadn't changed much compared with before, consisting of a series of black buildings that resembled a pack of giant black beasts. All of the buildings were enshrouded within restrictions of different colors, and these restrictions were interconnected with one another. These restrictions had become even more formidable than before, and together, they formed a giant ball of light that made it impossible to see what was inside from the outside. The Talisman Letter Palace outside the manor was still standing, but at this moment, there were only several cultivators inside, in stark contrast with how lively and bustling it had previously been. Han Li was standing at the entrance of the Talisman Letter Palace as he took a glance up at the Island Master's Manor. There didn't appear to have been anything out of the ordinary here, but Han Li could sense many pairs of eyes and bursts of spiritual sense constantly scouring the area, keeping close tabs on anyone approaching the scene. Han Li was rather taken aback by this as he strode toward the Talisman Letter Palace. The security here was tighter than ever, and it clearly wasn't just because of the increased frequency of natural disasters in the Black Wind Sea. Right as he stepped into the palace, two more streaks of light approached from afar, then landed in front of the Island Master's Manor in the blink of an eye to reveal a pair of figures. One of them was a young woman who appeared to be around 30 years of age. She was wearing a Taoist robe, but her head wasn't shaved. She was accompanied by a white-robed man with a longsword on his back and a sharp look in his eyes. Instead of immediately entering the manor, the white-robed man suddenly took an alert glance at his surroundings. "What is it, Elder Lu?" the young woman asked. "Nothing," the man replied as he continued to sweep his gaze across the surrounding area with slightly furrowed brows. Just now, his spiritual sense had detected that there seemed to be someone observing him from the shadows. However, this feeling had only appeared for an instant before fading, and he couldn't be certain whether it was just a figment of his imagination. In order to lay his suspicions to rest, he released his spiritual sense over the surrounding area, but was still unable to detect anything, and his brows furrowed even tighter. "Let's go, time is of the essence," the young woman urged in a low voice. The man nodded in response, and the two of them made their way into the Island Master's Manor together, encountering no resistance from the guards at the entrance. Only after a long while did Han Li emerge from the Talisman Letter Palace, before departing without even taking a glance at the Island Master's Manor. He appeared quite calm and collected on the outside, but he was reeling internally. He didn't recognize that woman, but that white-robed man was familiar to him. It was one of the northern glacial Immortal Palace's golden immortals, Lu Yue. Why is he here in the Black Wind Sea? Could it have something to do with me? As soon as this thought occurred to him, his heart immediately sprang up into his throat. He continued to walk away in an unhurried manner, but his spiritual sense was focused firmly on the Island Master's Manor behind him the entire time. At the same time, he was discreetly channeling his immortal spiritual power, ready to unleash an all-out attack at the first sign of any disturbance. Only after he was several dozen kilometers away from the Island Master's Manor did he feel slightly more reassured. But he still didn't dare to let down his guard as he picked up the pace and continued onward into the distance. 2 hours later, a streak of azure light flew out of Black Wind City before hurtling toward the distant sea. After flying for tens of thousands of kilometers, arcs of golden lightning abruptly emerged from the streak of azure light before forming a lightning formation with countless golden runes flashing within it. Before long, Han Li had vanished out of thin air alongside the lightning formation. Millions of kilometers away, a rumbling thunderclap suddenly rang out in the sky above the sea, immediately following which arcs of golden lightning sprang forth before intertwining to form a profound lightning formation. The golden formation then faded in a flash to reveal Han Li, and as soon as he appeared, he immediately released his spiritual sense throughout the surrounding area. Only after confirming that there was no one else within a radius of thousands of kilometers did he finally feel a little safer, and he cast his gaze in the direction of Black Wind Island with a contemplative look in his eyes. Lu Yue had to have come to the Black Wind Sea for a reason, but it most likely wasn't a hunt for him. Even though he was a wanted fugitive of the northern glacial Immortal Palace, he was still only a true immortal cultivator, so it would have surely been considered overkill to send a golden immortal after him. Even so, he still didn't dare to drop his guard. He was confident that he would be able to at least ensure self-preservation in the face of a golden immortal, but it would still be quite troublesome for him if Lu Yue were to find out that he was in the Black Wind Sea. On top of that, the fact that Lu Yue was able to enter the island master's manor so easily indicated that he had some ties with Black Wind Island. With that in mind, Han Li thought back to the strange group of people that he had encountered back when he first returned to the Black Wind Sea. Those people seemed to have had close ties with Black Wind Island as well. Could it be that they were also cultivators of the northern glacial Immortal Palace? With that in mind, Han Li flipped a hand over to produce a black formation plate, then cast an incantation seal into it, and the formation plate immediately began to release balls of black light that came together to form a voice transmission formation. After that, Han Li sent out a voice transmission message through the formation, but even after waiting for a full 15 minutes, the formation was still displaying no reaction. His brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this. This formation plate had been given to him by Worm 3 prior to his departure from the secret area, and he was planning to ask Worm 3 about the current state of affairs in the Black Wind Sea, but he wasn't receiving any response. Han Li shook his head as he stowed the formation plate away, then cast a contemplative gaze toward the sea down below. At the moment, the Black Wind Sea resembled the sea beneath him. It appeared calm and placid on the surface, and even the conflict between Black Wind Island and Azure Feather Island had temporarily subsided, but there were undercurrents churning beneath the surface. First, there was the Reincarnation Palace. This mysterious power that was a sworn enemy of the northern glacial Immortal Palace had suddenly appeared in the Black Wind Sea for some reason, and he had essentially been coerced to join them and refine that strange pill for an unknown purpose. Now, cultivators from the northern glacial Immortal Palace had also appeared here. Given the chaotic nature of the situation, it simply didn't make sense for him to stay here, and he should leave this place as soon as possible. However, the teleportation formation leading to the outside world was inaccessible, so the only way out was through the soul-stirring winds, and he was confident that he would be able to complete the journey with the help of the wind shelter bead. He was quite curious about what was deep inside the soul-stirring winds to begin with, so this was a good opportunity for him to satisfy his curiosity. With that in mind, Han Li was just about to fly away as a streak of azure light when he suddenly stopped in his tracks before turning toward a certain direction. After a brief hesitation, he flew in that direction instead. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit hall in the island master's manor in Black Wind City. The hall was only around 40 to 50 feet wide, but it was 200 to 300 feet deep, and there were 2 rows of wooden shelves on either side of the hall. The shelves were laden with lit candles that were giving off a peculiar aroma, but they weren't shedding much light on the hall. At the end of the hall was a 3-tiered platform, atop which sat none other than Zio Jinhin. His eyes were tightly shut, and he seemed to have been cultivating with wisps of black mist rising up from his body to encompass an area in a radius of roughly 30 feet around him. There was a peculiar, suffocating aura that enshrouded the entire hall, as if an invisible beast were prowling the hall. And standing at the foot of the platform were Lu Yue and the young woman in the Taoist robe. The two of them had faint sheens of sweat glistening on their foreheads, and both of them remained completely silent. A long while later, Zio Jinhin opened his eyes, and the surrounding black mist instantly vanished into his body, while the peculiar atmosphere in the hall also faded. Lu Yue and the young woman's expressions eased slightly upon sensing this, while Zio Jinhin asked, "How did it go?" "Rest assured, Palace Master, everything has been arranged according to your instructions. The distant displacement formation has also been reinforced, so there's no way that the people of the Vast Flow Palace and the Dawn Fall sect will be able to detect the location of the entrance," Lu Yue replied in a respectful voice. "Our main enemy is the Reincarnation Palace," Zio Jinhin said as his eyes narrowed slightly. Lu Yue immediately felt a tremendous burst of pressure weighing down upon him, and his complexion paled slightly as he hurriedly replied, "Yes, Palace Master. Right now, the people of the Reincarnation Palace definitely won't be able to find the entrance either." Zio Jinhin gave a slight nod upon hearing this, and he said in an authoritative voice, "This is a very important matter, so you must make sure that nothing goes wrong." "Rest assured, Palace Master," Lu Yue immediately replied. Zio Jinhin's expression eased slightly upon hearing this, and he gave a dismissive wave. Lu Yue and the young woman extended a parting salute, and only after they were far away from the hall did heave a collective sigh of relief. The Palace Master's powers are becoming more and more unfathomable. As long as this mission is a success, he shouldn't be far away from reaching the high zenith stage, the young woman said. "It's exactly because of this that failure is not an option," Lu Yue replied. "I'm well aware of that," the young woman replied with a nod, and the two of them quickly faded into the distance. Meanwhile, Lu Jun and Lu Yuking were standing beside a window of a distant pavilion. "Father, the Immortal Palace." Lu Jun hurriedly glared at Lu Yuking to cut her off, then closed the window before turning and making his way deeper into the pavilion. Lu Yuking stuck out her tongue with a slightly disgruntled expression before trailing along behind him. Lu Jun stopped in a room deep within the pavilion, then swept his sleeves through the air to release a series of incantation seals. 7 or 8 restrictions instantly appeared in the room in quick succession, following which Lu Jun thrust his palm into a nearby wall, and a secret opening appeared on the wall. The two of them made their way inside, and the secret opening immediately closed itself. Beyond the secret opening was a small room with walls that were constructed from a type of black crystal that was giving off a layer of faint black light. As soon as they entered this room, it was as if they had entered a separate space that was completely isolated from the outside world. "How many times do I have to tell you, Kinger? There's no telling how formidable the spiritual sense of those people are, so we have to exercise the utmost caution in everything that we say and do. This is perhaps the only safe place in the entire manor," Lu Jun said in a stern voice. "I understand, Father," Lu Yuking replied with a nod. Only then did Lu Jun's expression ease slightly, as he patted Lu Yuking on the shoulder in a doting fashion. then sat down beside a table in the room. "Father, we've been constantly working for the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace. Even if we set aside everything else, just the conflict against Azure Feather Island alone has resulted in close to half of our 36 subsidiary islands falling into ruin. Now that the Immortal Manor is about to emerge, can they really not spare us even a single spot?" Lu Yuking asked with a slightly indignant expression. A wry smile appeared on Lu Jun's face as he sighed. "The Northern Glacial Immortal Palace is too far above us for us to question its decisions." The indignation on Lu Yuking's face became even more pronounced upon hearing this. "We can't ask for too much. All we can hope for now is that after all of this is over, the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace will abide by its promise not to meddle in the affairs of our Black Wind Sea any longer," Lu Jun sighed. Half a month later, a flurry of golden lightning emerged in the sky tens of thousands of kilometers away from Dark Vale Island, following which Han Li appeared. He took a brief glance at his surroundings before flying toward Dark Vale Island, and upon arriving near the island, he was quite relieved to find that it appeared untouched by the frequent natural disasters. The entire island was still in a state of lockdown, and all of the restrictions were still activated. Han Li pulled out a storage bracelet, then swept a sleeve through the air to release a burst of azure light that enveloped the storage bracelet, following which it vanished in a flash. Inside a secret chamber on Dark Vale Island, Luo Feng was seated with his legs crossed, and his body was enshrouded within a cloud of mist. He seemed to have been cultivating some type of secret technique, and right at this moment, a ball of azure light containing a storage bracelet appeared in front of him without any warning. The azure light faded, and the bracelet fell onto the ground. The mist around Luo Feng immediately receded as he opened his eyes, and he faltered slightly at the sight of the storage bracelet on the ground, immediately following which Han Li's voice rang out beside his ears. "The island is to remain in lockdown for the next century." Luo Feng hurriedly rose to his feet, then cupped his fist in a respectful salute as he said, "Yes, ancestral god Liu Shi." That was the only instruction issued to him, and Luo Feng waited for a moment before picking up the storage bracelet from the ground. He then injected his spiritual sense into it, and an elated look immediately appeared on his face. The storage bracelet contained a large batch of spirit stones and materials that was sufficient to support the island's operation for several centuries. Meanwhile, Han Li had arrived at the place where his earthly deity avatar was cultivating. Checking on the state of the island was only the secondary objective for his visit, while HSI primary objective was to take the heavy water that his earthly deity avatar had refined over the past years. At this moment, Han Li was hovering in midair, looking down at the massive rumbling vortex on the surface of the sea down below with a hint of surprise in his eyes. The vortex was several hundred kilometers in size, and it was raising enormous waves that were over 1,000 feet tall in all directions. The vortex had never been this formidable before, and a thought suddenly occurred to Han Li as he swooped straight down into it. On a platform on the seabed, the earthly deity avatar was seated with dazzling blue light radiating from its entire body, forming a giant ball of blue light that was several hundred feet in size around it. Additionally, there was also a thread of blue light hovering above its head, and it had become roughly twice as thick as before, with countless blue runes dancing around it. An enormous aura was emanating from its body, indicating that it had already reached the late true immortal stage. Han Li was very pleased to see this, but not overly surprised. This avatar had already previously reached the pinnacle of the mid-true immortal stage, and even though he had been quite busy with his own cultivation, he still occasionally manifested some time crystals to send to the earthly deity avatar. With a sufficient supply of time crystals, It was never going to be that difficult for it to make a breakthrough. After all, in just the span of a few centuries, it had already managed to derive as much heavy water as the average cultivator would have done in several million years. All of a sudden, the blue light around the earthly deity avatars rippled before quickly vanishing into its body, following which it rose to its feet before casting its gaze toward Han Li. "Give me all of your heavy water," Han Li instructed. The earthly deity avatar flipped its hands over to produce a pair of heavenly water pouches, then offered them to Han Li. Han Li inspected the contents of the two pouches with his spiritual sense, and his eyes immediately lit up. One of the pouches was already full, while the other one was also close to halfway filled. It seemed that, with the increase in its cultivation base, the earthly deity avatar's rate of heavy water derivation had also improved significantly. He made a hand seal, and a layer of starlight appeared over his body as he reached out to grab the two pouches. Even though he was already prepared this time, his arms still sank down slightly upon receiving the pair of pouches, and only as all of his 18 profound acupoints lit up was he able to bear the collective weight of the two pouches with ease. A pleased look appeared on his face upon seeing this. These two pouches of heavy water, in addition to the one from before, were already enough for him to use in battle. He stowed the pair of heavenly water pouches away, then flipped a hand over to produce 3 empty ones before handing them to the earthly deity avatar. He then instructed it to continue producing more heavy water before promptly departing. After flying for some time, Han Li arrived in a deserted area before unleashing his lightning teleportation formation. He had also already packed up the lightning restraining wood teleportation formation on the way back to Dark Veil Island. Close to a month later, a streak of azure light shot forth from afar on the outskirts of the Black Wind Sea, then faded to reveal Han Li. Up ahead were the soul-stirring winds that spread as far and wide as the eyes could see. Han Li took a glance at the boundless soul-stirring winds, then flipped a hand over to produce his wind shelter bead before flying directly forward. The surrounding soul-stirring winds instantly converged toward him, but they weren't able to have much of an impact on him thanks to the wind shelter bead. After taking a moment to acclimate himself to the environment, Han Li began to gradually accelerate in his flight. Due to the fact that the world's origin chi was obstructed here, his immortal spiritual power recovery was severely inhibited. But prior to coming here, he had already spent quite a large sum of immortal origin stones to purchase a batch of recovery pills from the Transient Guild. Time slowly passed by, and in the blink of an eye, Han Li had already been flying through the soul-stirring winds for 4 or 5 days. The soul-stirring winds here were already far more formidable than the ones around the secret area of the Reincarnation Palace. Instead of their previous scattered state, the soul-stirring winds here had gathered together to form huge pillars of black wind that were hundreds, even thousands of feet tall, resembling countless giant black tornadoes wreaking havoc over the landscape. The tremendous force being released by these giant pillars of wind were severely diminished by the wind shelter bead, but it was still extremely formidable, comparable to an all-out attack from a grand ascension cultivator. At this moment, Han Li had already conjured up his true extreme film, which was keeping the formidable power being released by the pillars of black wind at bay with ease. While the power of the soul-stirring winds posed no threat to him, the ghastly sounds ringing out from within them had become more than 10 times as formidable as compared when he first entered the soul-stirring winds, and even though these sounds were also being buffered by the wind shelter bead, they were still a huge pain to deal with. As a result, Han Li had no choice but to slow down while using his spirit refinement technique to ward off the effects of those horrific sounds. At this moment, he was flying through the boundless soul-stirring winds at a rapid speed like a tiny raft. Time slowly passed by, and several days later, all of the surrounding soul-stirring winds had already formed massive black tornadoes that resembled enormous pillars connecting heaven and earth. These pillars of wind were constantly moving, occasionally overlapping with one another before separating again, and it was impossible to see anything through the suffocating darkness. Hanli flew through the giant pillars of wind with his body encompassed within the black barrier released by the wind shelter bead, and he was doing his best not to come into direct contact with these pillars of wind, while also protecting his own consciousness as much as possible. He could clearly sense the formidable glacial aura emanating from these pillars of wind, something that he certainly didn't want to be directly exposed to. He was still advancing onward, but at a far slower rate than before. The ghastly sounds here had become significantly louder once again, and he was still able to withstand it, but he didn't dare to release his spiritual sense out of his body anymore. One's spiritual sense was an extension of one's soul, so if he were to release his spiritual sense to come into contact with the surrounding soul-stirring winds, then the effects of the ghastly sounds ringing out from within them would be exacerbated. Thankfully, he still had his bright-sight spirit eyes, which allowed him to see the movement of the pillars of soul-stirring winds around him, even without the use of his spiritual sense. Otherwise, it would have been extremely difficult to make any meaningful progress. All of a sudden, a giant pillar of wind surged toward Han Li at an astonishing speed, but he was able to evade it by twisting to the side like an agile fish. However, right at this moment, a black shadow shot out of the pillar of wind like a bolt of black lightning. Thankfully, Han Li was able to react in a timely fashion, sweeping his joined index and middle fingers through the air to release a streak of azure sword chi that struck the black shadow with unerring accuracy. A dull thump rang out as the black shadow was sliced into two, and the black one eye on its surface dissipated to reveal an inky black snake inside. The snake was around 10 feet in length with 3 horns on its head, along with a pair of dark red eyes, and it was giving off an extremely forbidding glacial aura. Even after being sliced into two, it didn't perish. Instead, it was able to instantly fuse its body back together, and it was as if it hadn't been wounded at all, but the glacial aura that it was giving off had diminished significantly. A hint of surprise flashed through Han Li's eyes upon seeing this, and instead of fleeing the scene, the black snake hissed at Han Li in a menacing fashion, indicating that it wasn't a very intelligent creature. All of a sudden, it shot forth as a blurry shadow, vanishing without a trace before reappearing behind Han Li and pouncing viciously at his back. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face as he reached out with one hand, conjuring up a large azure palm projection that caught the black snake in a flash. The black snake writhed and struggled with all its might, but was unable to break free. The large azure hand brought the snake closer to Han Li and began to inspect it with slightly furrowed brows. This snake seemed to have been formed by the yin qi here, and unlike normal demon beasts, it had no physical body. In order to prepare for this trip, Han Li had read many scriptures related to soul-stirring winds, and one of them had mentioned that there were some yin beasts residing deep within the soul-stirring winds that were very difficult to deal with. This snake was undoubtedly one such yin beast. Han Li made a clenching motion with his hand, and the large azure hand immediately constructed around the black snake, crushing it into a cloud of black qi. However, instead of dissipating, the black qi began to writhe like a living creature, looking as if it were about to come together again. Han Li's expression darkened slightly as he flicked a finger through the air, releasing a bolt of divine devilbane lightning that struck the cloud of black qi in a flash. The black qi instantly scattered as if it had met the bane of its existence, and an anguished screech rang out from within it before it completely faded away. Han Li's expression eased slightly upon seeing this, and he continued onward. It seemed that the black snake was a precursor for things to come, and Han Li was attacked by more and more yin beasts as he flew onward. These yin beasts weren't very powerful, but their insubstantial bodies made them rather difficult to deal with. Thankfully, Han Li's divine Devilbane lightning was perfect for dealing with these creatures, so he was able to dispatch them with ease. As he continued to fly onward, a hint of surprise suddenly appeared on his face. The number of pillars of soul-stirring wind around him had suddenly decreased, becoming far sparser than before, and the few pillars of wind that remained were also significantly smaller than before. Han Li was rather taken aback by this, but he continued to fly onward, and as he did so, the number of pillars of soul-stirring wind continued to decrease until they disappeared altogether. All that was left in the place of the soul-stirring winds was a boundless expanse of black mist. The glacial aura in the air had diminished significantly, and all of the yin beasts had also vanished without a trace. The disappearance of the soul-stirring winds meant that the ghastly sounds they produced had mostly subsided as well, and it seemed that he had arrived in a peaceful area of black mist. Have I already passed through the soul-stirring winds? Han Li thought to himself, but then immediately shook his head. He had only been traveling through the soul-stirring winds for less than half a month, so there was no way that he had already passed through them. He was definitely still situated within the soul-stirring winds, but he seemed to have arrived in a special area. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to find many scriptures containing information on the soul-stirring winds, and there were no records of areas like this. After a brief moment of hesitation, Han Li continued onward, but he had slowed down even further and was carefully observing everything around him with his bright sight spirit eyes. After flying for close to an entire day, there was still nothing but black mist around him. In fact, the black mist had become denser and denser until it was also substantial in form. At this point, his visibility was very limited even with his bright sight spirit eyes. Furthermore, the mist was no longer as peaceful as before. Instead, some strange high-pitched sounds had begun ringing out within it, resembling the sound of an infant's crying. The sound wasn't very loud, and at times it was barely audible at all, but it was even more formidable than the ghastly sounds from before. He slowed down once again, and two beams of blue light that were each around a foot in length shot out of his eyes as he inspected his surroundings. After advancing through the black mist for a while, his expression suddenly changed slightly as he stopped in his tracks before casting his gaze forward. A burst of rumbling was ringing out up ahead, and the previously peaceful mist had suddenly begun to churn violently. The sound was becoming louder and louder, while the disturbance in the surrounding mist was becoming more and more violent, until it resembled a pot of boiling water. Han Li's brows were tightly furrowed, and he was considering whether to continue straight ahead or skirt around the disturbance when all of the black mist around him suddenly began to revolve in a frenzy, forming an enormous vortex. The vortex was so massive that he wasn't even able to see it in its entirety. In fact, he wasn't even able to ascertain where its center was, and it was releasing tremendous suction force that enveloped his entire body, forcibly drawing him toward the center of the vortex. Han Li's expression darkened slightly as the azure light radiating from his body brightened significantly, and only then was he able to stabilize himself. At the same time, a black shadow shot out of the black mist up ahead. It was a giant black toad-like yin beast that was around the size of a house with lumps growing all over its body, presenting a horrific sight to behold. The black toad opened its mouth up wide to release a pillar of dense black light that hurtled directly toward Han Li, seemingly attempting to prevent him from leaving. The pillar of black light was giving off astonishing glacial power fluctuations, and it seemed to be capable of freezing the very space in its wake. Han Li harumphed coldly as he swept a sleeve through the air, releasing an azure flying sword that instantly transformed into a giant azure sword that was over 100 feet in length with arcs of golden lightning flashing over its surface. The giant azure sword struck the pillar of black light, destroying it with ease before appearing above the toad yin beast's head and slashing down upon it. The yin beast's body was instantly cleaved into two, with divine devilbane lightning spreading over the two halves of its body, causing them to explode into two clouds of black chi. Even though Han Li had managed to slay the yin beast, it had managed to delay him a little, and the giant vortex behind him had gotten closer to him, while the suction force that it was releasing had become even more formidable. Han Li was just about to unleash a secret technique to fly away from the area when a giant black tentacle shot out of the vortex at an incredible speed before wrapping itself around him. However, thanks to his true extreme film, the tentacle wasn't actually able to make contact with his body. His expression changed slightly upon seeing this, but he then gave a cold harumph as he made a hand seal, and two azure bamboo cloud swarm swords instantly flew out of his body before striking the black tentacle. However, the tentacle was extremely resilient, and the pair of azure bamboo cloud swarm swords were only able to slice slightly into it before being brought to a halt. A surprised look appeared in Han Li's eyes upon seeing this, and before he had a chance to do anything else, the black tentacle abruptly pulled back with tremendous force, catching him off guard and dragging him into the huge vortex. In the next instant, he appeared in the eye of a rapidly revolving storm with deafening rumbling akin to the sound of countless thundering horse hooves ringing out around him. Bursts of tremendous suction force converged toward him from all directions, while the black tentacle remained wrapped around his body. Furthermore, it was rapidly constricting, but Han Li's true extreme film remained firm. Even though Han Li had been dragged into the vortex, he remained calm and collected, paying no heed to the black tentacle around him as he inspected his surroundings with slightly furrowed brows. Right at this moment, a low roar rang out from deep within the vortex, following which another tentacle shot out of the darkness, before also wrapping itself around Han Li's body. Han Li withdrew his gaze before peering deep into the vortex, and a cold gleam flashed through his eyes as he made a hand seal. A loud crackling sound rang out, and arcs of golden lightning suddenly appeared over the surface of the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords that had sliced into the black tentacle. Immediately thereafter, the pair of swords swelled to over 100 feet in size while rapidly revolving like lightning, slicing the two tentacles around Han Li into several pieces, all of which dissipated into clouds of black chi. A slightly raspy roar of pain rang out from deep within the vortex, and Han Li took a moment to steady himself before peering deep into the vortex with blue light flashing in his eyes. Deep inside the vortex was a huge black shadow that was currently rapidly approaching him. Han Li made no attempt to retreat or take evasive measures upon seeing this. The suction force in the surrounding space was still acting upon him, and while the force wasn't strong enough to immobilize him, it was certainly inhibiting his movements. He made a beckoning motion, and a flash of golden lightning appeared nearby, following which the flying sword that had just slain the toad yin beast also flew back to his side. The three golden lightning swords were hovering around him, while slowly revolving through the air. In the next instant, a huge black shadow flew out of the vortex up ahead, revealing itself to be a massive octopus that was several hundred feet in size. The giant beast had a pair of flashing red eyes that were the size of water vats, and they were filled with fury and resentment. There were around a dozen tentacles dancing behind the octopus, sweeping up gusts of fierce wind. The two tentacles that had just been severed were rapidly healing at a rate that was discernible to the naked eye, and the tremendous glacial aura emanating from the beast's body was comparable to that of a late true immortal cultivator. As soon as the beast revealed itself, all of its tentacles instantly intertwined to form a huge black neck that swept toward Han Li. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this. This yin beast was quite formidable, but it didn't seem to possess a high level of intelligence. It was solely driven by its bloodlust and acted almost entirely on instinct. Han Li had learned a couple of secret techniques that could allow him to engage in basic communication with spirit beasts, but those spirit beasts had to possess a certain level of intelligence. He had originally planned to capture this beast and use one of those secret techniques to ask it some questions about this area, but it seemed that plan wasn't going to work. With that in mind, he shook his head as he made a hand seal, and the three giant lightning swords arranged themselves into a triangular formation at his behest, before hurtling directly toward the giant octopus yin beast. The golden lightning on the three giant swords then reared up before intertwining to form a golden lightning net, with countless thick arcs of golden lightning, erupting from its surface to clash against the huge net formed by the octopus's tentacles. A string of dull thumps rang out as black chi and golden light erupted in all directions. As soon as the black chi on the surface of the tentacles came into contact with the divine devilbane lightning, it was instantly eradicated, while the arcs of golden lightning spread over the tentacles to inflict a series of wounds. Even though the black tentacles were inherently vulnerable to divine devilbane lightning, they were formed by such dense black chi that even the divine devilbane lightning was unable to eradicate them with just a single strike. An agonized roar rang out from the octopus yin beast's mouth, and only then did a hint of fear appear in its eyes, as it occurred to the beast that this was an insurmountable opponent. It immediately swiveled around with the intention of fleeing the scene, but Han Li certainly wasn't going to allow it to get away. A sharp gleam flashed through his eyes as he made a hand seal, and the three giant swords instantly released a barrage of golden sword projections that surged rapidly toward the octopus's tentacles. Those tentacles had already been severely weakened, and they were instantly torn to shreds by the barrage of sword projections. The octopus yin beast let loose another agonized roar, and it paid no heed to its own severed tentacles as it opened its mouth to release a ball of inky black liquid. As soon as the liquid emerged, it immediately swelled to form a giant black cloud that was around an acre in size to inundate the three giant golden swords and all of the sword projections. The three giant swords were instantly immobilized by a burst of restrictive force within the cloud, while the severely wounded octopus yin beast fled into the distance at an incredible speed, seemingly completely unaffected by the suction force from the vortex. Han Li gave a cold harumph as he made another hand seal, and the three golden swords instantly fused as one to form a massive sword that was around 1,000 feet in size. Thick arcs of dazzling golden lightning then appeared over its surface, giving off an astonishingly formidable aura. The enormous sword swiveled around slightly, then released a burst of tremendous power, and the surrounding black cloud was instantly torn apart. Immediately thereafter, the huge sword vanished amid a flash of golden lightning, and in the next instant, it appeared directly above the octopus yin beast's head before swooping down upon it with unstoppable force. The octopus yin beast was completely powerless to resist, as its body was sliced into two, following which the two halves of its body exploded into two vast clouds of black chi. The giant golden sword then shot back to Han Li at his behest, before splitting back up into three azure flying swords that flew back up his sleeve. However, in the next instant, a hint of blue light flashed through his eyes, and he swept a hand through the air to release a burst of azure light into the black chi. The burst of azure light quickly returned to him, bringing with it a dark green ball. It was a fist-sized ball enveloped within a layer of green light, and it appeared very similar to a wood attribute spirit stone, except the glacial energy fluctuations emanating from the object were completely different from wood attribute spiritual chi. Could this be a demon core? All of a sudden, he recalled the soul stones that he had gathered in the Umbra realm back when he was still in the mortal realm. 1. The aura emanating from this green bead was very similar to that of soul stones, except this bead's aura was countless times more powerful. Hanli flipped a hand over to stow the green bead away, then began inspecting his surroundings with a contemplative look in his eyes. This area in the soul-stirring wind really was rather similar to that of Stormwind Mountain in the Umbria realm. 2. Could it be that these two places were somehow related? Hanli only considered this matter for a moment before shaking his head and casting his gaze out of the vortex. Right now, his top priority was to leave this vortex, so he had no time to ponder such trivial matters. The suction force being released by the vortex was quite formidable, but it wasn't enough to inflict any substantial harm upon his body. However, it was going to make it rather difficult for him to leave. After a brief moment of contemplation, a burst of azure light appeared over his body alongside arcs of golden lightning, and he transformed into a streak of golden and azure light as he flew toward the mouth of the vortex. As soon as he left the central area of the vortex, the surrounding storm instantly became more powerful. Hanli felt the surrounding air constrict around him, following which his body was swept up involuntarily by the storm. He gave a cold harumph as the light radiating from his body brightened, yet instead of forcibly going against the rotational force of the storm, he went along with it while simultaneously flying outward. Moments later, Hanli emerged from the churning black mist on the outskirts of the vortex. His complexion was a little pale, and he continued flying until there was some distance between himself and the vortex before he finally drew to a halt and heaved a sigh of relief. The vortex had been more powerful than he imagined, and it had cost him a significant amount of immortal spiritual power to break out of it. After taking a recovery pill, he reverted back to his true appearance as he removed his reincarnation palace mask. After stowing the mask away, he continued to fly onward as a streak of azure light, and before long, he had been flying for several days once again. There were no other hazards within this sea of black mist aside from the occasional giant vortex, and these vortexes came in a diverse range of sizes, but the vast majority of them were larger than the one that he had first encountered, with some of them even several times larger. He could tell that the suction force that the largest ones of those vortexes was releasing was too formidable even for him to deal with, and if he were to get too close, he would most likely be sucked in and trapped inside indefinitely. However, whenever he encountered a smaller vortex, he would slay the yin beast residing inside, and as a result, he ended up with quite a few more of those green beads. All of a sudden, a resounding boom rang out, and the sea of mist behind Hanli suddenly began to churn violently. He stopped in his tracks as blue light flashed within his eyes, and immediately thereafter, he hurriedly flew away to the side. Not long after he did so, an enormous vortex surged rapidly through the sea of mist behind him before quickly vanishing out of sight. Hanli remained still on the spot for a moment longer before continuing onward. During the past few days, he had gradually become more and more proficient at avoiding these vortexes. Shortly thereafter, a strange sound suddenly rang out from within the mist up ahead, and a cold look appeared on Hanli's face as he immediately swept a sleeve through the air. An azure flying sword shot out of his sleeve, then rapidly swelled to over 1,000 feet in size, and it was radiating dazzling azure light as it flew into the churning mist up ahead. As soon as the giant sword flew into the mist, a resounding boom rang out, and the azure sword was sent flying back, while the azure light on its surface was thrown into a state of disarray. A burst of tremendous force was transmitted to Han Li through the giant's sword, and he shuddered as he took an involuntary step backward while sweeping his sleeve through the air once again at the same time. Around a dozen azure bamboo cloudswarm swords flew out before also swelling to over 1,000 feet in size each, then plunged viciously into the mist up ahead. Even though Han Li still hadn't yet caught a glimpse of the yin beast up ahead, he could tell that it was more formidable than any that he had previously encountered. Streaks of azure sword chi shot out of the mist up ahead, causing it to rumble and churn violently. Immediately thereafter, all of the giant azure swords were sent flying back with a deafening boom. On top of that, a thick layer of black ice crystals had appeared over the blades of all of the swords, and the azure light that was emanating from them had dimmed significantly. Han Li's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, and he pointed a finger forward. Arcs of golden lightning sprang out of all of the giant azure swords once again, instantly shattering the black ice crystals clinging to the swords to restore them to their former state. However, instead of unleashing more attacks, Han Li drew to a halt as he cast his gaze forward with a grim look on his face. Right at this moment, the vast expanse of black mist up ahead churned violently, following which a massive black shadow flew out from within. It was traveling at an incredible speed, yet it wasn't making any sound at all, and it arrived near Han Li in the blink of an eye. Before Han Li had a chance to react, a giant trident with black mist swirling around it emerged from the black shadow before being swung down at him with mountainous force. Is it not a yin beast? Han Li hurriedly made a hand seal, and the dozen or so giant azure swords around him instantly rose up into the air to form a uniform net above his head. At the same time, a series of thick arcs of golden lightning appeared over the swords. An earth-shattering boom rang out as the trident struck the net of swords with astonishing power, almost shattering the sword net in a single blow. Arcs of divine devilbane lightning erupted out of the swords to strike the trident, scattering much of the black mist around it, but the trident itself remained completely unmoved. Han Li let loose a low roar as he prepared to make another hand seal, but right at this moment, the trident shuddered before releasing 3 bursts of inky black flames out of its 3 tips, and those flames instantly spread through the air to envelop the sword net while giving off a glacial aura. Black ice crystals instantly began to appear on the giant azure swords once again, and even the arcs of golden lightning surging over the swords were frozen solid, presenting a peculiar sight to behold. All of a sudden, the trident swiveled around with tremendous force, instantly shattering the sword net and sending the dozen or so giant azure swords flying in all directions. The trident then pierced viciously toward Han Li as fast as lightning, and it was upon him in the blink of an eye. A vast expanse of black flames erupted out of the trident, forming a giant black draconic head the size of a house, and it opened its mouth up wide in an attempt to swallow Han Li whole. All of this had taken place in the blink of an eye, and it was already too late for Han Li to take evasive measures. In this dire situation, he let loose a low roar as 18 specks of starlight appeared over his chest and abdomen, and at the same time, he thrust both fists upward with all his might. 2 starry fist projections that were several dozen feet in size erupted into the heavens to clash against the trident with another earth-shattering boom, sending violent tremors surging through the surrounding space. Han Li's entire body shuddered, and he was sent flying back over 1,000 feet before managing to steady himself. He then turned to discover that the fiery black draconic head had faded, revealing the trident inside, which had also fallen still. The massive black shadow controlling the trident also shuddered slightly, seemingly having been struck by some recoil from the clash. Han Li took a deep breath to suppress the churning blood and energy in his body, and an extremely grim look had appeared on his face. Up to this point, he still hadn't even managed to catch a clear glimpse of what the Black Shadow was, but its powers weren't inferior in the slightest to any of the golden immortals that he had encountered in the past. At this point, he was already very deep in the soul-stirring winds, and even though he had encountered some perils along the way, nothing had posed a substantial threat to him. Prior to encountering this Black Shadow, he was even beginning to suspect that the rumors about this place were overstated. As these thoughts were running through Han Li's mind, the Black Shadow began to fly toward him once again. Han Li was already prepared for this, and a burst of azure light interspersed with arcs of golden lightning appeared over his body as he shot back like a speeding arrow. However, he was being outstripped by the Black Shadow, and the gap between them was rapidly shrinking. Han Li made a hand seal, and a sharp screeching sound rang out from within his body as a series of azure flying swords emerged, before converging to form a ball of azure light in front of him. The dozen or so azure giant swords that were encased in black ice crystals also shattered the ice crystals around them once again, before flying back and fusing into the ball of azure light. In the blink of an eye, the ball of azure light transformed into an azure sword lotus flower that was around an acre in size. At the same time, a vast expanse of black flames emerged over the Black Shadow, instantly transforming it into a giant ghostly head with a pair of crimson eyes, and it was certainly very menacing in appearance. After taking on this form, the Black Shadow's speed was significantly enhanced, and it caught up to Han Li in just a few seconds. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he made a hand seal, and the azure sword lotus flower bloomed as it released countless giant streaks of azure sword chi, with arcs of golden lightning flashing over them. The barrage of sword chi shot into the black mist around the ghostly head, but much to Han Li's alarm, they were seemingly unable to inflict any damage upon the ghostly head at all. The giant ghostly head abruptly swelled in size before opening its cavernous mouth to let loose a thunderous roar, sending black sound waves sweeping through the air to encompass the entire azure sword lotus flower. The sword lotus flower instantly began to tremble violently, before being forcibly split up into 72 small azure swords that fell out of midair in an unstable fashion. Han Li's body also began to tremble involuntarily within the sound waves, and it was as if there were countless tiny daggers twisting in his internal organs. Additionally, his soul was also shuddering uncontrollably, and he couldn't help but give a muffled groan. These black sound waves contained some type of strange energy, and if an ordinary late true immortal cultivator that wasn't a profound immortal was in his place, they would have most likely already been reduced to a pile of mincemeat. The giant ghostly head let loose a low roar, and black light flashed within its mouth as the trident reappeared with black light radiating from its tips. An ear-splitting screech rang out as 3 thin streaks of black light shot out of the tips of the trident, before vanishing into thin air in a flash. A sense of foreboding welled up in Han Li's heart upon seeing this, and he hurriedly made a hand seal to summon his mantra treasured axis. As soon as the axis appeared, it began to rapidly revolve while releasing waves of golden ripples in all directions. At the moment, only fewer than 20 of the time Tao runes on the axis were lit, so the golden ripples were rather lackluster in appearance. As soon as the golden ripples appeared, the space not far ahead of Han Li shuddered, following which 3 black threads emerged before hurtling toward his chest at an extraordinary speed. The black threads were slowed down significantly by the mantra treasured axis, but they were still flying through the air like lightning. Han Li immediately took evasive measures, but the black threads were too fast, and a small gash was inflicted onto his shoulder. However, not a single drop of blood flowed out of the gash. Instead, wisps of black chi emerged instead. Han Li immediately made a beckoning motion to draw one of the nearby azure bamboo cloud swarm swords back to himself, following which the sword cut viciously into his shoulder, severing the gash along with a large chunk of the flesh connected to it. As soon as the chunk of flesh was severed, the black chi instantly transformed into black flames that incinerated the piece of flesh into ashes. Han Li's expression darkened even further upon seeing this. If he had reacted even just a little slower than he had just now, the injuries that he sustained would have most likely been far more severe. Meanwhile, the black flames around the giant ghostly head churned, indicating that it was about to unleash some other type of attack. But before it could do so, Han Li made a hand seal, and all of the scattered azure bamboo cloud swarm swords nearby immediately began to glow radiantly again. At the same time, thick arcs of lightning sprang out of the swords, then intertwined to form a giant golden lightning net in front of the ghostly head. Right at this moment, around a dozen huge tentacles suddenly shot out of the black mist around the giant ghostly head before sweeping toward the golden lightning net up ahead. However, as soon as these misty tentacles came into contact with the lightning net, they immediately disintegrated into plumes of black smoke. The ghostly head let loose a furious roar, but it was unable to break through the lightning net in a short time. Han Li heaved an internal sigh of relief upon seeing this. He had unleashed all of the divine Devilbane lightning in his azure bamboo cloud swarm swords at once, and that was finally enough to keep the ghostly head at bay for now. Immediately thereafter, he swept a sleeve through the air to stow away all of his azure bamboo cloud swarm swords, following which he transformed into a giant silver bird, with arcs of silver lightning flashing all over its body. This was none other than his lightning bird transformation, and as soon as he adopted this form, a second pair of translucent wings appeared on his back. Those were none other than his thunderstorm wings, and with a flap of all four wings at once, Han Li instantly vanished from the spot amid a flash of lightning. There were unknown dangers littered throughout the soul-stirring winds, so he didn't dare to unleash his lightning movement techniques prior to this. But in the face of an insurmountable enemy like this one, he had no choice but to take the risk. The giant ghostly head let loose a furious, and the surrounding black mist instantly converged toward it, causing the black flames around its body to rear up violently. All of a sudden, the ghostly head also vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, the lightning bird had only just appeared somewhere far away amid a flash of lightning, when a burst of spatial fluctuations emerged not far behind it, following which the giant ghostly head appeared, enshrouded within a vast expanse of black flames. As soon as the ghostly head appeared, it immediately opened its mouth to release three more black threads that shot forth toward the lightning bird at an astonishing speed. The lightning bird hurriedly flew through the air as a bolt of silver lightning, just barely evading the black threads before vanishing once again. The giant ghostly head began cackling with glee, like a predator stalking its prey, as it also vanished into thin air. After that, Han Li continued to flee through the soul-stirring winds, while the giant ghostly head gave chase. And no matter what Han Li did to try and escape, even resorting to his lightning teleportation formation at one point, the giant ghostly head remained hot on his heels. Sometime later, the lightning bird appeared somewhere within the soul-stirring winds amid a flash of silver lightning, but the arcs of silver lightning around its body had already diminished significantly. All of a sudden, the lightning bird retracted its wings before reverting back to its human form. Right at this moment, the space no more than 10,000 feet away shuddered, immediately following which the giant ghostly head emerged amid a vast expanse of black flames. A grim look appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. Continuing to run away like this was simply going to be futile, and even though he didn't want to use Taoist Zai, he had no choice but to do so. With that in mind, arcs of golden lightning emerged over his body, and Taoist Zai was getting ready to strike at any moment. The giant ghostly head seemed to have also sensed something, and a serious look appeared in its eyes. Right at this moment, the black mist behind it was abruptly stirred up into a frenzy, following which a ball of dazzling yellow light shot out from within. It was an ovular burst of yellow light that was over 100 feet in size, and it was revolving rapidly as it hurtled through the air. Furthermore, the yellow light was very dense, making it impossible to clearly identify what was inside it, and it was giving off formidable energy fluctuations. As soon as the burst of yellow light appeared, a streak of crimson light with countless crimson runes flashing within it immediately shot forth. All of the crimson runes then converged to form a translucent crimson thread that shot into the giant ghostly head at an astonishing speed, piercing through the black flames around it with ease. The crimson thread was so fast that only after it had flown into the giant ghostly head did it realize what had happened, upon which it instantly swung around. Right at this moment, a resounding boom suddenly rang out from within the ghostly head, and it immediately stiffened, following which the black flames around it began to churn violently. Another resounding boom rang out as a pillar of crimson flames exploded out of the ghostly head like a volcanic eruption, sending waves of scorching heat sweeping in all directions. In the span of just a few seconds, the entire ghostly head disintegrated into a vast expanse faux black flames. A sharp screech rang out from deep within the black flames, following which a black shadow flew out from within, then sped away into the distance, vanishing out of sight in the blink of an eye. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly as blue light flashed within his pupils, and he was able to catch a glimpse of the black shadow. It was a humanoid creature with a disproportionately large head, and it was wielding the very same trident that Han Li had previously been attacked by. Unfortunately, the black shadow had fled too quickly for Han Li to get a good look at it. Han Li withdrew his gaze as he turned his attention to the ball of yellow light. At the same time, he flew back in retreat while making a hand seal, and the 7 bright star rings immediately emerged from his body. The 7 rings hovered around him, forming an orderly star formation, and all of the rings were releasing dazzling starlight that connected together to form a starlight restriction. Even though the ball of yellow light had helped him force the ghostly head into retreat, he was not so naive to believe that this was an ally, so he had to take the necessary safety precautions. Meanwhile, the ball of yellow light swiveled around slightly, then faded to reveal a yellow flying boat that was around 40 to 50 in length. It resembled a flying dragon, and it seemed to have been constructed from some type of yellow spirit wood. At the front of the boat were embedded a pair of bright yellow, egg-sized ovular crystals that were giving off a special type of law fluctuation, but Han Li wasn't able to identify the crystals. There were 2 people standing next to each other on the flying boat, one of which was none other than Taoist Hu Yan. There was a rectangular object on his back that was enveloped within a yellow cloth. The object was around a foot in length, and the yellow cloth seemed to be able to keep out spiritual sense, making it impossible for Han Li to see what was beneath it. Standing beside Taoist Hu Yan was none other than Yun Nai, and a stunned look appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. Elder Hu Yan, Elder Yun Nai. I sensed from afar that a battle was taking place here, so I decided to come and take a look, but I certainly wasn't expecting to see you here, Taoist Hu Yan chuckled. Meanwhile, Yun Nai merely nodded at Han Li without saying anything. I was also not expecting to meet the 2 of you here, Han Li said with a smile as he made a hand seal to withdraw the starlight restriction around him. Taoist Hu Yan was his closest acquaintance back in the Blaze Dragon Dao, and the 2 of them had been quite close. Ever since the incident back in the Blaze Dragon Dao, Han Li had been keeping tabs on news pertaining to Taoist Hu Yan, but he certainly wasn't expecting to run into him here. Looks like we really are connected by fate, Taoist Hu Yan mused with a smile. Thank you for stepping in and forcing that black shadow into retreat, Elder Hu Yan, Han Li said as he cupped his fist in a grateful salute. Don't worry about it, I just so happened to be passing through anyway. Speaking of which, how did you end up being pursued by that yin wraith? That thing is not easy to deal with, and you're extremely fortunate not to have been devoured by it, Taoist Hu Yan said with a serious expression. So that's what it's called. That thing was indeed quite formidable. Do you know its origins, Elder Hu Yan? Han Li asked. Yin wraiths are a type of creature unique to this area. It's impossible to ascertain their exact cultivation base, but even the average golden immortal would struggle to escape the fate of being devoured by one. However, these creatures generally only appear in the deepest parts of the soul-stirring winds, so it's very rare to see one so far on the outskirts, Taoist Hu Yan mused with a befuddled expression. In any case, these yin wraiths are quite powerful, but they're not very intelligent, so now that this one's fled in retreat, it won't come back, Taoist Hu Yan continued. That's good to hear. If I hadn't run into the two of you here, I would have most likely met my demise, Han Li replied as he extended a grateful nod. Now that we're no longer in the Blaze Dragon Dao, I think it would be best to do away with the Elder title, Taoist Hu Yan said with a meaningful expression. Han Li nodded in agreement. He had joined the Reincarnation Palace, while Taoist Hu Yan was most likely already a member of the Reincarnation Palace, so they were once again part of the same organization, but Han Li chose not to reveal this information. I saw a while back that you've also become a wanted fugitive of the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace, fellow Taoist Li. I must say, I feel a little guilty about this. If we hadn't been so close back in the Blaze Dragon Dao, you wouldn't have been implicated by connection, Taoist Hu Yan said in an apologetic voice. The Northern Glacial Immortal Palace isn't actually after me because of my connection to you. Instead, I have other differences with the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace, Han Li explained in an ambiguous manner. I see. Hold on a minute, have you already reached the pinnacle of the true immortal stage? No wonder you were able to ward off that yin wraith, Taoist Hu Yan said with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Yun Nai had been standing beside Taoist Hu Yan in silence this entire time, and she was clearly also quite taken back to hear this. I was simply very fortunate to have made some progress in my cultivation since we last met, Han Li replied in a humble manner. Back when you first joined the Blaze Dragon Dao, you were still only at the early true immortal stage, yet you've reached the pinnacle of the late true immortal stage in just a few centuries since then. I've never heard of anyone in the entire Northern Glacial Immortal region making such rapid progress, Taoist Hu Yan exclaimed with an incredulous expression. You're far too kind, Senior Hu Yan. I was only able to make such fast progress by obtaining some pills by chance, Han Li explained, once again intentionally keeping things very ambiguous. Is that so? I suppose with the right pills, one can indeed significantly enhance their rate of cultivation progress, Taoist Hu Yan mused with a thoughtful expression. Han Li heaved an internal sigh of relief upon seeing this. Thanks to the heaven-controlling vial, he was able to make rapid progress in his cultivation, but the downside was that this incredible progress could attract much suspicion from those who had known him over any substantial period of time. With that in mind, Han Li didn't want to linger on this topic, so he quickly changed the subject. By the way, what are you two doing here? After escaping from the Blaze Dragon Dao, we've constantly been in hiding from the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace, but on this occasion, we have to make a trip to the Black Wind Sea for an important matter. But the teleportation formation is closed indefinitely, so we had no choice but to pass through these soul-stirring winds, Taoist Hu Yan explained. I see, Han Li replied with a contemplative nod. Why are you also here, fellow Taoist Li? Could it be that you just came from the Black Wind Sea? Yun Nai suddenly asked. That's correct, Senior Yun Nai. The Black Wind Sea is not a very safe place at the moment, Han Li replied. A hint of elation flashed through both Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai's eyes upon seeing this, and that certainly didn't escape Han Li's attention. Why did you come to a place as secluded as the Black Wind Sea in the first place, fellow Taoist Li? Yun Nai asked. Prior to joining the Blaze Dragon Tao, I actually stayed in the Black Wind Sea for some time. After becoming a wanted fugitive of the Immortal Palace, I decided to lie low for a while, so I came back to the Black Wind Sea, and I've been able to cultivate in relative peace for the past few centuries. However, there's been a great deal of unrest in the Black Wind Sea of late, and it's no longer safe for me to stay there, so I decided to leave. I also decided to cross through the soul-stirring wind due to the inaccessibility of the teleportation formation, but it seems I was overconfident in my own powers, Han Li said with a self-deprecating expression. What's been happening in the Black Wind Sea recently? Taoist Hu Yan asked. Taoist Hu Yan swept a sleeve through the air to release a streak of red light as he spoke, and the streak of light flew toward Han Li before hovering in front of him. Han Li focused his gaze on the streak of red light to discover that it contained a golden jade vial that was giving off a faint medicinal aroma. This is a vial of 6 profound pills that are very effective for both recovery and restorative purposes. It must have been quite a taxing journey for you through these soul-stirring winds, so these pills will be perfect for you, Taoist Hu Yan said. I appreciate the kind gesture, Senior Hu Yan, but I can't accept these pills. You've already saved me from that yin wraith, so I certainly can't ask for compensation just for answering a few simple questions, Han Li said with a shake of his head as he returned the jade vial to Taoist Hu Yan, who stowed it away again without raising any objections. After a brief pause, Han Li gave Taoist Hu Yan a recount of what he had seen in the Black Wind Sea, as well as revealing that cultivators of the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace had appeared on Black Wind Island. However, he made no mention of the fact that he had joined the Reincarnation Palace. After all, even though he speculated that Taoist Hu Yan was also a member of the Reincarnation Palace, this wasn't something that Taoist Hu Yan had ever openly admitted to. Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai listened to what he had to say with contemplative looks on their faces, and they didn't appear overly surprised, as if they had already anticipated that all of this would happen. It seems like the two of you already expected all of this to happen in the Black Wind Sea, Han Li remarked with a smile. Taoist Hu Yan raised an eyebrow upon hearing this, while Yun Nai took a glance at him, and both of them remained silent. If you don't want to answer the question, then just pretend as if I never asked, Han Li said with a faint smile. It would be rude of us to keep secrets, given how candid you've been with us, fellow Taoist Li, Taoist Hu Yan said after a brief moment of contemplation. Hu Yan, Yun Nai's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. It's fine. Fellow Taoist Li is no stranger to us, and perhaps we may need his help for what we're going to do, Taoist Hu Yan said in a meaningful voice. Yun Nai didn't say anything further upon hearing this. What do you mean by that, Senior Hu Yan? If there are some complicated circumstances involved, then I'm happy to be kept in the dark, Han Li said with slightly furrowed brows. He was trying to stay out of trouble as much as possible at the moment. Don't be so quick to jump to conclusions, fellow Taoist Li. What I'm about to tell you could be a brilliant opportunity, Taoist Hu Yan said with a hint of mystery in his voice. All right then, please go ahead, Senior, Han Li prompted. You just mentioned the increased frequency of natural disasters taking place all over the Black Wind Sea just now, and there's actually a reason for that. To put it in simple terms, an immortal manner is about to emerge, and that's causing a disturbance in the spirit veins in the region. The cultivators of the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace have also come precisely for this immortal manner, and that is our objective as well, Taoist Hu Yan revealed. Han Li was quite taken aback to hear this, but at the same time, this answered some of the questions that had been on his mind of late. This explained all of the strange actions that had been taken by Black Wind Island and Azure Feather Island, as well as the sudden appearance of northern glacial Immortal Palace cultivators in the Black Wind Sea. The origin void pill that he had refined for Worm 3 most likely had something to do with this immortal manor as well. With all these thoughts racing through his mind, Han Li took a deep breath to collect himself, then continued to listen to Taoist Hu Yan had to say. This immortal manor is called the Infernal Frost Immortal Manor, and it's a cave abode that was left behind by an almighty senior referred to as the Infernal Frost Immortal Lord countless years ago. It's impossible to ascertain just how many years it's been, but it was said that this immortal lord had gone to great lengths to seal this immortal manor in a spatial rift before vanishing without a trace. After that, once every few tens of thousands of years, the immortal manor would appear somewhere in the northern glacial immortal realm. Inside the immortal manor are countless precious treasures, pills, cultivation arts, and even immortal treasures. It could be said that it's the #1 treasure trove of the northern glacial immortal realm, Taoist Hu Yan continued, and at the same time he was observing Han Li's expression. However, Han Li's reaction was rather unexpected to him. Aside from the initial surprise that Han Li had displayed, he had remained quite calm thereafter. Han Li was silent for a moment, then asked, "Could it be that the opportunity you were referring to earlier is the opportunity for me to accompany the two of you into the Infernal Frost Immortal Manor?" "Precisely. Are you not interested, fellow Taoist Li?" Taoist Hu Yan asked. Instead of answering Taoist Hu Yan's question, Han Li said, "It sounds like the Infernal Frost Immortal Manor has already existed for countless years, so it must have emerged quite a few times in the past. Even if there were many precious treasures inside, surely they would have already all been taken at this point. You don't have to be concerned about that, fellow Taoist Li. The Immortal Manor is rife with restrictions, and it's not easy to obtain the treasures inside. There have been many who have bitten off more than they could chew and lost their lives in the Immortal Manor, and the possessions that they left behind have added to the treasures waiting to be claimed. On top of that, it's said that someone discovered an independent area within the Immortal Manor during its last opening, and no one knows they found in that area," Taoist Hu Yan replied. Instead of displaying any excitement upon hearing this, Han Li fell silent once again. Taoist Hu Yan didn't try to rush Han Li into a decision, merely waiting in silence as he pondered the offer. "Thank you for the invitation, senior, but as the saying goes, risk and reward always come hand in hand, and I'm not prepared to take such a risk right now, so I'll have to turn down the offer this time," Han Li decided after some deliberation. His top priority right now was to find a way to reach the golden immortal stage, and accompanying Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai into this Infernal Frost Immortal Manor was only going to lead him astray. Most importantly, the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace had also sent many cultivators into the Black Wind Sea on this occasion, with no lack of golden immortals among them, and if they were to uncover his identity, then the Immortal Manor would most likely become his final resting place. Taoist Hu Yan seemed to have gleaned Han Li's thoughts, and he asked, "Are you worried about encountering Immortal Palace cultivators inside the Immortal Manor?" Han Li nodded in response. "I am but a mere true immortal cultivator, and I'll be completely powerless to defend myself if I encounter any Immortal Palace cultivators." Furthermore, both Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai were also wanted fugitives of the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace, so accompanying them into the Infernal Frost Immortal Manor would only further increase his chances of exposure. "There's no need to be concerned about that. I know that you've also joined the Transient Guild, and the disguises that can be adopted using transient guild masks are so profound that even golden immortal won't be able to see through them easily. If we disguise ourselves as a trio of itinerant cultivators, I'm sure the cultivators of the northern glacial immortal palace wouldn't be able to identify us. On top of that, there are always many powers that send cultivators into the infernal frost immortal manor whenever it emerges, and that includes the vast flow palace and the dawnfall sect. The northern glacial immortal palace may be formidable, but they'll have their hands full dealing with their competitors, so they won't be able to target itinerant cultivators like the ones we'll be posing as, Taoist Huyan said. Are you saying that the vast flow palace and the dawnfall sect have also sent people to the Black Wind Sea? Hanley asked as a hint of surprise appeared on his face. The top three sects of our northern glacial immortal region have never been absent from such an occasion. Even though the Blaze Dragon Dao is no longer the force it once was, the other two sects are relatively unaffected, and I'm sure they've already sent people to the Black Wind Sea upon receiving wind of the immortal manor's imminent emergence. Additionally, due to what happened to the Blaze Dragon Dao, the other two sects are harboring more enmity toward the northern glacial immortal palace than ever before, and there's a decent chance that they'll join forces to target the northern glacial immortal palace in the immortal manor, Taoist Huyan replied. So essentially, the northern glacial immortal palace will be too busy dealing with them to focus on us. Is that correct? Hanley asked. That's right, Taoist Huyan replied with a nod. Hanley fell into deep thought upon hearing this. Taoist Huyan did have a point. After all, not only was the immortal palace at odds with the vast flow palace and the dawnfall sect, it also had the reincarnation palace to worry about. It was very likely that Worm 3 was also planning to venture into the immortal manor, and with so many enemies at every turn, it was very likely that the northern glacial immortal palace would be completely preoccupied. Taoist Huyan could tell that Han Li was beginning to warm to the idea, so he continued. On top of that, there are many treasures in the immortal manor, and at your current cultivation base, perhaps you'll be able to find an opportunity in there that can help you break through to the golden immortal stage. Han Li's eyes immediately lit up upon hearing this, and he asked, are there really treasures in the immortal manor that can help one make progress to the golden immortal stage? I've only heard rumors that they exist, but I'm inclined to believe those rumors. After all, there has been a past instance of someone in the immortal manor finding a cauldron full of premium pills that can enhance the cultivation base of golden immortals, Taoist Huyan replied. It sounds like you don't know too much about the immortal manor yourself, senior. Perhaps there are some precious treasures in there, but I really don't want to risk my life for what could possibly be nothing more than a pipe dream, Hanley said after some contemplation. That's a reasonable viewpoint. Cultivators like us do everything in our power to mitigate risk as much as possible. Having said that, you're currently cultivating the mantra axis scripture, right? Taoist Huyan asked. Hanley didn't know why this question was being raised, but he still nodded in response. That's correct. I presume you're not familiar with the origins of this cultivation art, right? Taoist Huyan asked with a mysterious smile. Please enlighten me, Senior Huyan, Hanley said as he cupped his fist in a salute. The mantra axis scripture may be the premier cultivation art of the Blaze Dragon Dao, but it doesn't come from the Blaze Dragon Dao. Instead, it was taken by Dao Lord Bailey from a sect called the True Mantra sect many years ago, Taoist Huyan revealed. Hanley nodded in response to this revelation, and he wasn't overly surprised. Even though this was the true immortal realm, it wasn't much different in nature from lower realms in that there were still conflicts constantly taking place between cultivators, and every single day, there were countless sects being destroyed, with their treasures and cultivation arts being plundered. With that in mind, Han Li chose to remain silent. Taoist Hu Yan had clearly mentioned this topic for a reason, and there had to have been a follow-up. Sure enough, after a brief pause, Taoist Hu Yan continued, "What I want to tell you is that there are more than just 3 levels of the mantra treasured axis. Instead, the full cultivation art has 9 levels." Han Li's expression instantly changed drastically upon hearing this. After reaching the pinnacle of the late true immortal stage, he had begun planning for this future cultivation once he reached the golden immortal stage, and he had tried to search for cultivation arts related to the laws of time that were beyond the true immortal stage, but to no avail. Hence, he was naturally extremely excited to hear that there were more parts of the mantra axis scripture. Han Li took a deep breath to suppress his own excitement, then asked, "In that case, why did Senior Bailey declare that there were only 3 levels to the mantra axis scripture?" Even in the context of the entire true immortal realm, cultivation arts related to the laws of time are exceedingly rare, and those that can support one's cultivation to the golden immortal stage are already extremely sought after. If it were revealed that the mantra axis scripture had more than 3 levels, then endless troubles would have most likely awaited the sect, Taoist Hu Yan explained. "That does make sense," Han Li mused with a contemplative nod. On top of that, Tao Lord Bailey only obtained the first 6 levels of the cultivation art, and at the moment, I have all 6 levels in my possession, Taoist Hu Yan revealed. Han Li's expression remained unchanged, but internally he was growing rather excited as he asked, "What do you need me to do, Senior Hu Yan?" "All you need to do is accompany us into the Infernal Frost Immortal Manor and help me obtain a certain item. After that, I'll give you the latter 3 levels of the cultivation art," Taoist Hu Yan replied with a smile. A contemplative look appeared on Han Li's face upon hearing this. Meanwhile, Taoist Hu Yan stood calmly with his hands clasped behind his back, seemingly completely unconcerned by the possibility that Han Li could reject him. A long while later, Han Li raised his head as he said, "If what you're telling me is true, then I'm certainly open to considering the offer. However, I have to make sure that you really do have the latter 3 levels of mantra axis scripture in your possession." Taoist Hu Yan faltered slightly upon hearing this, then nodded in response as he flipped a hand over to produce a jade slip. After that, he cast a few incantation seals into the jade slip before tossing it at Han Li. Han Li caught the jade slip before briefly inspecting its contents with his spiritual sense, then nodded as he declared, "This indeed a continuation of the mantra axis scripture." Only the first few lines of the jade slip were revealed to him, but having already mastered the first 3 levels of the mantra axis scripture, he was naturally able to identify from those few lines whether this was the 4th level of the cultivation art. "In that case, do we have ourselves an agreement?" Taoist Hu Yan asked with a smile. "Before I answer that, I have a question that I'd like to ask you," Han Li replied. "Go ahead, fellow Taoist Li," Taoist Hu Yan prompted. "I am just a true immortal cultivator, and my powers are far inferior to yours, so even if I accompany you into the immortal manor, I struggle to see how I can offer you any meaningful assistance. I'm sure there must be a reason why you're willing to offer me such substantial compensation for my participation, and I want to know that reason," Han Li said. "Even if you hadn't asked me this question, I would have explained it to you. I've already told you just now that I'm entering the Infernal Frost Immortal Manor in order to obtain a certain item. During this process, my chances of success will be significantly increased if I can benefit from the assistance of your mantra-treasured axis," Taoist Hu Yan explained. "If it's a precious treasure that you're going after, then there will surely be people fighting over it. Will that not put us in a dangerous situation?" Han Li asked as his brows furrowed slightly. "There will definitely be some danger, but the mantra axis scripture is an extremely precious cultivation, so you can't expect to obtain it without taking any risk. Of course, We'll do everything in our power to keep you safe, but I can't make any promises beyond that, Daoist Huyen replied. Han Li still seemed to be rather hesitant upon hearing this. How about this? As a show of sincerity, as long as you're willing to enter the immortal manor with us, I can give you the 4th level of the mantra axis scripture right away, and after we obtain the item that I'm searching for, I'll give you the subsequent 2 levels, Daoist Huyan said. Han Li contemplated the matter for a moment longer upon hearing this, then nodded in agreement to the offer. All right, in that case, we have ourselves an agreement. Rest assured, you can count on me to follow through on my promises, Daoist Huyan said with a smile. That was never a concern for me, Senior Huyan. We've known each other for many years, and I'm well aware of your integrity and character, Han Li replied with a smile of his own. Come and board our flying boat, fellow Daoist Li. We're still inside the soul-stirring winds right now, and this is not a place anyone should stay in for an extended period of time, Daoist Huyan said as he made an inviting hand gesture. Han Li duly obliged, flying onto the yellow flying boat, and Daoist Huyan made a hand seal, upon which the entire flying boat began to radiate dazzling yellow light, forming a ball of yellow radiance that encompassed the entire boat. Immediately thereafter, the ball of yellow light set off at a remarkable speed, and it was giving off type of special energy fluctuations that seemed to be capable of suppressing soul-stirring winds, as evidenced by the face that all of the soul-stirring winds in the path of the ball of yellow light instantly parted to grant it free passage. Sitting on the flying boat, Han Li was surprised to discover that he was unable to hear the sounds of the soul-stirring winds at all. It seemed that this flying boat had similar properties to his wind shelter bead, except those properties were significantly more enhanced in the former. With that in mind, he began to carefully inspect the flying boat, particularly the 3 yellow crystals embedded into the boat. Yun Nai noticed what Han Li was looking at, and she explained, "Those crystals come from the remains of evil-warding beasts." Evil-warding beasts, the same beasts that are said to be able to bring luck and ward off misfortune, Han Li asked with a hint of surprise in his eyes. He had seen records of this type of beast in some ancient scriptures in the past. It was said that these beasts possessed the innate ability to suppress all evil entities, thereby earning itself a resounding reputation in the true immortal realm. It was also said that those who had such a beast by their side would always be blessed with good fortune, and for this reason, evil-warding beasts had been hunted to near extinction many years ago. I don't know if evil-warding beasts can bring good fortune or not, but Huyan used their remains to refine this flying boat, and quite evidently, it's very effective at warding off soul-stirring winds, Yun Nai replied with a faint smile. I see, as expected of a man of Senior Huyan's talents. By the way, where is Bai Sayuan right now? Han Li asked. Yuaner had already left the Blaze Dragon Dao prior to the preaching ceremony, and she's currently cultivating in a safe place, Yun Nai replied. That's good to hear, Han Li replied with a nod. At the mention of Bai Sayuan, Han Li couldn't help but think of Meng Qian and the others. In order to avoid exposing his own identity, he hadn't contacted them at all since last parting ways with them. However, everyone had to rely on themselves in life, and perhaps Meng Qian and the others could carve out their own paths without his protection. Han Li shook his head to rid himself of this train of thought, then closed his eyes and began to cultivate. 3 days passed by in the blink of an eye. It only took the flying boat 3 days to cover the same distance that had taken Han Li about half a month to travel. The 3 of them were standing in midair, looking at the sea up ahead, and Daoist Huyan mused, "So this is the Black Wind Sea." The Black Wind Sea is on the outskirts of the northern glacial Immortal region, so the world's origin chi here is naturally far sparser than elsewhere. At the moment, we're on the northwestern border of the Black Wind Sea. Here are some maps of the entire region, Hanli said as he pulled out a pair of jade slips before handing them to Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai. Taoist Hu Yan accepted the jade slip before injecting his spiritual sense into it, upon which he raised an eyebrow as he remarked, "It looks like the Black Wind Sea is quite a massive region." The Black Wind Sea may be secluded, but it's no smaller than the average continent, Han Li agreed with a nod. Taoist Hu Yan's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing, and he stowed the jade slip away before flipping a hand over to summon a blue scroll, upon which was a piece of scenic artwork. "That's an infernal frost scenic painting," Han Li exclaimed as his gaze fell upon the blue scroll. "Oh, how do you know that, fellow Taoist Li?" Taoist Hu Yan asked with a surprised expression. "I once saw this item being sold in a secret auction held before the preaching ceremony, but that one had been an incomplete artwork, yet even so, it had still been purchased for a very high price. Could it be that you were the one who purchased the item?" Hanli asked. "An infernal frost scenic painting was sold at an auction before the preaching ceremony. This is the first time I've heard about this. However, I obtained this artwork from elsewhere, so it's definitely not the same as the one that you saw," Taoist Hu Yan said with a surprised expression. "Does that mean there are two of these infernal frost scenic paintings? Also, judging from its name, it seems to have something to do with the infernal frost immortal manor. Is that right?" Han Li asked. "That's right. In order to enter the infernal frost immortal manor, you must have an infernal frost scenic painting, so it acts as a key of sorts. According to my knowledge, there are a total of 8 of these paintings. The Northern Glacial Immortal Palace, the Dawnfall Sect, the Vast Flow Palace, and the Blaze Dragon Dao all have one each, while the remaining 4 are missing. The one that you saw during that auction must have been one of those 4, Taoist Hu Yan mused. Han Li was enlightened upon hearing this. It was no wonder that the mysterious red-robed female cultivator had been willing to pay such a high price for an incomplete infernal frost scenic painting. With that in mind, Han Li couldn't help but wonder which organization she was affiliated with. "You just mentioned that the Blaze Dragon Dao also has one such painting. Could it be?" "That's right. The Blaze Dragon Dao currently no longer has an infernal frost scenic painting. The painting has always been in the possession of Dao Lord Bailey, but now that Dao Lord Bailey and I have both left the sect, we naturally took the painting with us," Taoist Hu Yan replied with a smile. Han Li shook his head as he heaved a faint sigh. At the height of its powers, our Blaze Dragon Dao was ranked alongside the likes of the Vast Flow Palace and the Dawnfall Sect, with 13 golden immortal Dao Lords and thousands of true immortals among its ranks, as well as countless subsidiary powers. If Dao Lord Aoyang and the others hadn't colluded with the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace, there was no way that the Immortal Palace would have been able to do anything to our Blaze Dragon Dao. Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai's expressions both darkened slightly upon hearing this, and it was clear that this was still something that weighed on their mind. To be honest, what you saw was only a surface-level picture. In reality, deep-rooted conflicts had already been raging between the 13 Dao Lords for a very long time, and if it wasn't for Dao Lord Bailey, the Blaze Dragon Dao would have been left in the dust by the Vast Flow Palace and the Dawnfall Sect long ago. There's no point in mentioning this now. Let's focus on the matter at hand, Taoist Hu Yan sighed. With that, he began to chant an incantation while making a rapid string of hand seals, and streaks of blue light flew out of his hands to form a circular formation projection that was radiating dazzling blue light. After that, Taoist Hu Yan swept a hand through the air, and the infernal frost scenic painting that he was holding flew through the air as a streak of blue light before landing at the center of the formation in a flash. Wisps of blue light that resembled clouds and mist instantly began to rise up from the artwork, and a glacial aura also began to spread through the surrounding area, causing the nearby air temperature to plummet. In the blink of an eye, the surface of the sea within a radius of several dozen kilometers down below had frozen solid, while snowflakes were drifting through the air. The infernal frost scenic painting was hovering at the center of the formation, and the latter was revolving around the former. The two were resonating with one another, and the blue light that they were radiating intertwined together before flashing in a rhythmic fashion, as if they were detecting for something. A hint of curiosity appeared in Han Li's eyes upon seeing this, but he didn't ask any questions as he didn't want to distract Taoist Hu Yan. As for Yun Nai, he wasn't very familiar with her, so he naturally wasn't going to ask her any questions either. Moments later, Taoist Hu Yan swept a sleeve through the air, and the entire blue formation projection instantly disintegrated into specks of blue light that were then scattered in the wind. The light radiating from the infernal frost scenic painting also faded before it returned to Taoist Hu Yan's grasp. At the same time, the glacial aura in the air also receded, but the surface of the sea down below remained frozen solid. "How are things looking?" Yun Nai asked. "Judging from the current signs, there should be roughly 3 or 4 years left until the immortal manor emerges," Taoist Hu Yan replied. Han Li took a glance at the blue scroll that Taoist Hu Yan was holding upon hearing this. It seemed that this painting wasn't just a key. "What about the exact location?" Yun Nai asked. "I'm unable to detect it from here, so we must be too far away. Thankfully, we still have time. We can decide on a few locations on the map, then try again from those places," Taoist Hu Yan replied. Yun Nai nodded in response. Taoist Hu Yan turned to Han Li as he asked, "Do you have any plans, fellow Taoist Li? We still have some time left. Would you like to stay with us or make some preparations on your own?" Han Li considered his options for a moment, then replied, "If I'm going to be accompanying the two of you into the immortal manor, then it would be best for me to make some preparations, so I think I'll go off on my own for now." "That's probably a good idea. The immortal manor is fraught with peril, so it would be in your best interests to make some preparations," Taoist Hu Yan replied with a nod. He then flipped a hand over to produce a palm-sized red formation plate before handing it to Han Li as he continued, "Find a safe place, and if you need anything from me, contact me using this bonfire plate." Han Li accepted the formation plate to find that there was a flame design emblazoned on its surface, and he nodded in response before stowing it away. After that, Taoist Hu Yan cautioned Han Li not to be discovered by cultivators from the Immortal Palace, then promptly departed with Yun Nai. Han Li lingered in the area for a moment longer, then flew away in a different direction as a streak of azure light. Half a month later, Han Li emerged near Dark Vale Island amid a flash of azure light. He took a glance at the island to find that all of the restrictions were still in place, indicating that the island remained in lockdown. He then withdrew his gaze before flying away into the distance. On the surface of the sea not far away from Dark Vale Island was an enormous vortex that was rumbling like thunder. All of the seawater within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers were converging toward the vortex before being sucked into it. Han Li flew straight into the sea, and before long he arrived on the seabed. Within a blue restriction sat his earthly deity avatar with its eyes closed and its legs crossed, and there was a water law thread hovering above its head, slowly revolving in the same direction as the vortex up above. The surrounding seawater was constantly converging toward the vortex before being rapidly converted into drops of heavy water, and at this point, there was already a ball of heavy water the size of a human head between the earthly deity avatar's palms. The ball of heavy water didn't appear to be remarkable in any way upon first glance, but Han Li could clearly sense that it was different. In particular, its density far exceeded that of heavy water of the first level. Han Li flew into the blue restriction as an azure shadow, then sat down with his legs crossed. With only 3 or 4 years left, he couldn't be bothered to search for another place to go into seclusion, so he decided to return to Dark Vale Island. He made a beckoning motion, and the ball of second-level heavy water flew out of his avatar's grasp before landing in front of him. Just this small ball of second-level heavy water was already as heavy as a mountain that was several thousand feet tall. Han Li closed his eyes as he released his spiritual sense, and he could sense tremendous water attribute spiritual power surging out of the ball of second-level heavy water, striking him with the false impression that he was currently standing in front of a vast lake. He opened his eyes, and a pleased look appeared on his face. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly, and he began considering refining all of his first-level heavy water into second-level heavy water. However, he then shook his head to dismiss the thought. He didn't have much time on his hands at the moment, and it was best to leave such a time-intensive task until after he returned from the Immortal Manor. With a sweep of his sleeve, Han Li returned the ball of heavy water to his earthly deity avatar, following which a contemplative look appeared on his face. With only several years left before the emergence of the Immortal Manor, there wasn't enough time for him to make any substantial progress in any of his cultivation arts. Hence, the only way that he could maximize his powers in a short time would be to work on his spirit treasures and immortal treasures. Immortal treasures that he had taken from others like the 7 bright star rings weren't going to be easy to refine, so it seemed that his only options were the azure bamboo cloudswarm swords and the heavy water true axis. With that in mind, Han Li raised a hand, and a series of streaks of azure light flew out of his sleeve, transforming into 72 small azure swords with thin arcs of golden lightning flashing over them. These were none other than his azure bamboo cloudswarm swords, and they were giving off a tremendous and peerlessly sharp aura, causing the nearby seawater to quiver and shudder. The swords had been slightly damaged during his battle against that yin wraith, but after being nurtured in his body over the past few days, they were close to making a full recovery. Han Li lifted his other hand, and his heavy water true axis also flew out of his body. He looked back and forth between the two treasures for a moment, then ultimately decided on the heavy water true axis and stowed his azure bamboo cloudswarm swords away. While his azure bamboo cloudswarm swords were his bonded treasure, it was not going to be easy to enhance their powers in a short time, and doing so without a proper plan could have a detrimental effect. As for his heavy water true axis, this was a faux immortal treasure that he had created using a cultivation art, and it still had much room for improvement. On top of that, even if it were damaged from a failed refinement attempt, the consequences would be far from catastrophic. After making up his mind, Han Li took a deep breath, then made a hand seal. And the water Dao rune on the heavy water true axis instantly lit up, releasing waves of blue ripples. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. As he had progressed in his cultivation through the years, he had developed a deeper understanding of how to use the heavy water true axis in battle. It wasn't going to be very difficult to enhance its power, and he had even considered refining the treasure again on multiple past occasions. He flipped a hand over to produce a jade slip, which contained the refinement method of the faux axis. After that, he pressed the jade slip to his own forehead and closed his eyes. Only after sitting completely still for 3 days did he reopen his eyes, then rose to his feet before pulling out some materials and beginning to make some inscriptions on the ground. A day and a night later, an extremely complex formation had appeared on the ground. Within the formation were 8 ring designs that were giving off bursts of blue light, and Han Li was seated at the center of the formation. His earthly deity avatar had also stopped manifesting heavy water and was seated across from him. Hanli made a hand seal while opening his mouth to release a ball of azure nascent flames, and at the same time, his earthly deity avatar also opened its mouth to release a ball of blue flames that mixed together with the azure nascent flames. The two flames came together to form a blue and azure fireball that was several feet in size, and it enveloped the heavy water true axis to scorch it with intense heat. All of the runes on the heavy water true axis instantly lit up as it began to tremble and buzz. Hanli began to chant an incantation while casting a series of incantation seals forward, and the formation immediately began to operate. The 8-ring designs within the formation blurred momentarily, following which a series of profound golden runes appeared within them, intertwining with one another to form numerous spherical projections in midair. As Hanli continued to cast more incantation seals into the formation, the spherical projections exploded into balls of blue flames, making it appear as if the entire formation had been set alight. Right at this moment, he switched to a different hand seal, and all of the balls of fire drifted out of the formation before converging toward the heavy water true axis. The fireball around the heavy water true axis rapidly swelled to the size of a millstone, and the heat that it was radiating was rapidly elevating, causing the surrounding air temperature to spike drastically. In the face of these scorching blue flames, the spirit patterns on the surface of the axis gradually began to turn transparent. A month flew by in a flash. At this point, the heavy water true axis had already turned completely transparent, resembling a translucent blue crystal that was radiating dazzling blue light. However, this blue light was constantly pulsating, and it was as if the heavy water true axis could succumb to the heat and melt into a liquid form at any moment. At the same time, the water Dao rune on the axis had become even brighter and was giving off formidable water law fluctuations. Hanli swept a sleeve through the air upon seeing this, and 7 or 8 different materials appeared in front of him. All of these materials were different shades of blue and contained water law powers. He made a hand seal while sweeping a sleeve through the air, and all of the blue flames in the entire formation gradually converged into the 8-ring designs in the formation. A few seconds later, all of the blue flames in the formation had completely gathered in the 8 rings, forming 8 pillars of blue fire. With a wave of Hanli's hand, the 8 materials each flew into one of the 8 fiery pillars. Immediately thereafter, Hanli began to chant an incantation, and the 8 pillars of blue fire began to rapidly revolve, transforming into 8 fiery tornadoes that were radiating scorching heat. The 8 materials within the fiery tornadoes melted into balls of blue liquid one after another, and within each ball of blue liquid was a blue rune that symbolized the law powers that the materials contained. Hanli gave a slight nod upon seeing this, then switched to a different hand seal once again, upon which the blue liquid within the 8 pillars of fire flew out in unison, before vanishing into the ball of fire around the heavy water true axis. Hanli then took a deep breath as a look of concentration appeared on his face, and he began to make a rapid string of hand seals. Meanwhile, the ball of fire around the heavy water true axis began to revolve, quickly forming a fiery vortex. The 8 pillars of fire within the formation also converged and fused into the fiery vortex, causing it to rapidly expand while also increasing in heat. Large beads of sweat were beginning to appear on Hanli's forehead as he continued to make a rapid string of hand seals, and the 8 balls of liquid gradually fused into the heavenly water true axis, while the fiery vortex continued to revolve. With each ball of liquid that was infused, the blue light radiating from the axis would brighten slightly, and countless blue runes could be seen dancing within the light. The blue light appeared very chaotic, while all of the blue runes inside were also jumping around in a completely haphazard fashion, causing the entire axis to tremble in an unstable fashion. Right at this moment, the earthly deity avatar's eyes abruptly sprang open, and it made a hand seal as a thick blue translucent thread appeared above its head. Immediately thereafter, the blue thread shot forth and infused itself into the heavy water true axis. A burst of blinding blue light erupted out of the heavy water true axis, illuminating the entire seabed within a radius of several hundred kilometers. A burst of formidable water law fluctuations were emanating from the blue light, sending visible ripples spreading through the surrounding air. All of a sudden, all of the blue runes around the heavy water true axis were abruptly stabilized before vanishing into the axis in a flash. Han Li immediately began casting incantation seals into the axis upon seeing this, and the axis began to buzz and tremble, as was the case with the blue light that it was emitting. In the next instant, the surface of the sea within a radius of hundreds of kilometers began to churn violently, and countless vortexes appeared beneath the surface. All of a sudden, countless blades and arrows of water began to sweep through the seawater, shredding everything in their path. All of the living marine creatures within a radius of several hundred kilometers were instantly slaughtered, while a thick layer of the seabed had also been stripped away. Han Li faltered slightly upon seeing this, following which an elated look appeared in his eyes. He then took a deep breath, and the elation in his eyes faded. At the same time, the flow of azure nascent flames surging out of his mouth ceased, and the formation on the ground instantly stopped functioning as well. The earthly deity avatar also withdrew the blue nascent flame that was streaming out of its mouth. With all of the flames out of the way, all that was left was the semi-transparent heavy water true axis hovering in midair. Han Li opened his mouth to release a ball of blood essence, fused into the heavy water true axis in a flash. Immediately thereafter, the semi-transparent axis quickly began to take on an opaque black color, and at the same time it was rapidly cooling down. Blue light flashed over the axis's surface, and 9 specks of gentle blue light emerged before transforming into 9 water Dao runes. A burst of water law fluctuations that were several times more formidable than before surged out of the heavy water true axis, and a hint of elation appeared in Han Li's eyes upon seeing this. After toiling away for over a month, he had finally succeeded. He was looking a little weary, and only after taking a recovery pill did his complexion gradually improve. Han Li exhaled as he examined the heavy water true axis, and the satisfaction in his eyes grew even more pronounced. The refinement had been unexpectedly successful, and the axis's power had been significantly enhanced. Even though he hadn't tested it in battle yet, he estimated that it was at least 4 to 5 times more powerful than before. The primary reason for this was the substantial investment that Han Li had made, infusing 8 materials that contained water law powers into the heavy water true axis at once. Many of these materials had been obtained from Han Li's past enemies, and they could have been used to refine an immortal treasure or 2 of comparable power to the heavy water true axis. Now that all of them had been infused into the heavy water true axis, it only made sense that there was such a significant enhancement in power. Aside from that, there was another important factor, which was that the water law thread that the earthly deity avatar had manifested from the power of faith had also been infused into the heavy water true axis. A water law thread manifested by an earthly immortal wasn't going to be as pure as one manifested by a true immortal who had truly mastered the laws of water, but it was still nothing to be scoffed at. Han Li made a beckoning motion to draw the heavy water true axis into his grasp, and he felt as if he were holding a vast sea, allowing him to control all of the water attribute spiritual power within a radius of thousands of kilometers. Han Li tossed the heavy water true axis before making a hand seal, and the axis began to emit dazzling blue light as all 9 of the water Dao runes on its surface lit up, forming a blue ring of light. He closed his eyes as he carefully sensed the change taking place within the blue ring of light, trying to glean the laws of water. Even though he was currently cultivating the laws of time, it naturally couldn't hurt to master more laws. Having just remodeled the heavy water true axis, he had developed a deeper understanding of the laws of water, and he was certainly going to take full advantage of this opportunity. A burst of water attribute law powers began to spread through the area, and the nearby seawater began to churn violently once again, sending enormous waves sweeping over the surface. Right at this moment, a burst of black light flashed from the heavenly water pouch strapped to the earthly deity avatar's waist, and a ball of second-level heavy water flew out from within. As soon as the ball of heavy water emerged, it immediately flew toward the heavy water true axis before fusing into it. The light radiating from the heavy water true axis rippled slightly, then became a little brighter. Han Li's eyes sprang open as a hint of surprise appeared on his face, but he made no effort to stop what was happening. The heavy water true axis continued to revolve as one ball of heavy water after another flew out of the heavenly water pouch before fusing into the axis. Due to the time constraints, the earthly deity avatar hadn't manifested much second-level heavy water, and before long, the heavenly water pouch was completely emptied. After absorbing all of this heavy water, the blue light radiating from the axis had become brighter, while the axis itself had also become significantly heavier. This was a very pleasant surprise to Han Li. Back when the heavy water true axis was first refined, it hadn't been all that powerful, and only after it had absorbed a huge quantity of first-level heavy water did it become one of his trump cards. Unfortunately, it was unable to absorb more heavy water beyond a certain point, thereby stunting its growth. But now, following its remodeling, it had regained the ability to absorb heavy water. Han Li swept a sleeve through the air, and a ball of first-level heavy water flew out of one of his heavenly water pouches before enveloping the heavy water true axis. However, the heavy water true axis seemed to be rather resistant to level 1 heavy water and refused to absorb it. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, but he quickly realized why this was happening. Not only had the heavy water true axis become far more powerful following the refinement process, the energy that it contained had also become far purer. In comparison, the energy imbued within the first-level heavy water was of an inferior level, so it would have actually only been detrimental for the axis to absorb first-level heavy water. It looks like I'll have to refine all of my first-level heavy water after all, he murmured to himself as he flipped a hand over to produce a heavenly water pouch, then handed it to his earthly deity avatar. At this point, there were only roughly 3 years left until the emergence of the immortal manner, so time was very tight, and the more second-level heavy water that he could refine, the more powerful the heavy water true axis would become. The earthly deity avatar accepted the heavenly water pouch, then drew out a large ball of first-level heavy water. At the same time, dazzling blue light began to radiate from its body, as bursts of power of faith were transmitted to it from afar, while a tiny blue thread of light appeared above his head. A wry smile appeared on Han Li's face at the sight of the thin blue thread. All of the water law powers that the earthly deity avatar had manifested from the power of faith had been infused into the heavy water true axis, thereby leaving the avatar's cultivation base severely impaired. And now, it had to start all over again in its manifestation of law powers. The earthly deity avatar made a hand seal as it channeled its Black Sea heavy water tome, and the thread of light above its head began to emit beams of blue light with countless tiny blue runes within them, shining upon the first-level heavy water in its hands. The heavy water instantly began to condense, slowly evolving into second-level heavy water. However, this process was extremely slow, and Han Li could only heave a faint sigh upon seeing this. The rate of heavy water manifestation was extremely slow to begin with, and now that the Avatar's water law powers had been significantly impaired, this process was only going to be even slower. At this rate, it wasn't going to be able to manifest much second-level heavy water at all in 3 years. After a brief moment of contemplation, Han Li flipped a hand over to summon his heaven-controlling vial, inside of which was a drop of green spirit liquid. He then cast an incantation into the vial, and all of a sudden, countless dark clouds began to gather in the sky, while the world's origin chi began to churn violently. Several days later, Han Li was holding a time crystal in his hand. With his immense late true, immortal stage, immortal spiritual power, manifesting these time crystals was no longer very taxing on him at all. With a sweep of his sleeve, the time crystal flew over to his earthly deity avatar, following which the translucent golden thread inside fused into the thread of blue light. The thread of blue light instantly brightened significantly as a layer of golden light appeared on its surface, while the rate at which the ball of first-level heavy water in its hands was being converted into second-level heavy water was sped up significantly. Before long, the entire ball of first-level heavy water had been converted into second-level heavy water. The earthly deity avatar stowed the ball of heavy water away, then produced another ball of first-level heavy water to continue the conversion process. Han Li heaved an internal sigh of relief upon seeing this. Thankfully, the time crystals were capable of accelerating this process. Otherwise, he would have been at a loss for what to do. After lingering on the seabed for a while longer, he rose up through the water and quickly broke through the surface. From there, he inspected his surroundings briefly, before descending onto a small coral island near Dark Vale Island. The seabed was quite peaceful and safe, but the moonlight wasn't able to reach the seabed, so he wouldn't be able to manifest more spirit liquid. With a sweep of his sleeve, a series of formation flags flew out before landing near the island. This was a very secluded place, so Han Li didn't bother to be too meticulous with his security measures, only setting up a few formations before sitting down with his legs crossed and setting down his heaven-controlling vial beside him. After that, he swept his sleeve through the air once again to summon the ingredients required to refine the Golden Soul pill. He had already gathered all of the required materials, but he had been too busy to refine the pill prior to this. Now that he had nothing to do anyway, he decided to take advantage of this opportunity to refine this pill in preparation for a future breakthrough. After meditating for some time to prime himself into the best condition, he flipped a hand over to produce his silver cauldron, then opened his mouth to release his flame of essence onto the underside of the cauldron. After doing all of that, he summoned the jade box that contained Tao Yu's nascent soul, then removed all of the restrictions around the nascent soul before transferring it into the cauldron. Once that was done, he opened his mouth to release a stream of azure nascent flames that mixed together with the flame of essence, and the temperature within the cauldron was instantly significantly elevated. Enveloped within the two flames, the nascent soul was being subjected to scorching heat, while Han Li observed the changes taking place within the nascent soul with rapt focus. At the same time, he was constantly making hand seals to control the two-colored flames within the cauldron. Close to a month flew by in the blink of an eye. At this point, the nascent soul within the cauldron had shrunk down into a fist-sized golden bead, with streaks of translucent light surging over its surface. Han Li picked up another ingredient before transferring it into the cauldron, and close to another month flew by in a flash. On this day, the world's origin chi in the area suddenly began to rumble and churn, while beams of golden light emerged to form a series of golden flowers. At the same time, heavenly music was ringing out across the heavens, and an ecstatic look appeared on Han Li's face as he stared at the cauldron in front of him. Hovering in the air above the cauldron was a longan-sized golden pill that was giving off dazzling golden radiance, and it was none other than a golden soul pill. The refinement process for the golden soul pill wasn't actually all that complicated, and with Han Li's current level of pill refinement proficiency, he was able to successfully refine the pill in less than 2 months. There was a projection of a miniature humanoid figure around the pill, and it was as if the pill possessed a soul. At the same time, it was giving off a peculiar medicinal aroma, and as soon as Han Li breathed in this aroma, he could feel his own soul beginning to display signs of making a breakthrough. As expected of a pill that can elevate one's soul, Han Li praised as he carefully stored the golden soul pill into a jade box, then adhered a few talismans to the box before stowing it away into his storage bracelet. After that, he made a beckoning motion to draw his heaven-controlling vial to himself, then cast an incantation seal into it, and all of the world's origin chi around the coral island instantly began to converge toward the heaven-controlling vial in a frenzy. Several days later, the surging world's origin chi around the coral island gradually subsided, while the heaven-controlling vial slowly descended, and the drop of spirit liquid inside had been converted into a time crystal. He stowed the vial away, then took a recovery pill before sweeping a sleeve through the air to release a burst of azure light, which enveloped the time crystal before transporting it to the seabed. Moments later, the streak of azure light returned from the seabed, carrying a heavenly water pouch. It was flying in a rather sluggish manner, as if it were carrying a huge mountain. Han Li reached out to grab the heavenly water pouch, and his arm instantly sank down a little. He released his spiritual sense to inspect the contents of the pouch, and to his elation, he discovered that it already contained enough second-level heavy water to fill a pond. It seemed that with the time crystal speeding up the process, the earthly deity avatar was able to manifest second-level heavy water quite quickly, even though the avatar's water law powers were severely hampered. With that in mind, he summoned his heavy water true axis, then drew a ball of second-level heavy water around the size of a human head out of the heavenly water pouch. The ball of heavy water then spread over the axis at Han Li's behest, and blue light began to radiate from the 9 water Tao runes on the heavy water true axis, illuminating the entire nearby area a bright blue color. The 9 water Tao runes began to rapidly devour the second-level heavy water like 9 mouths, and it didn't take long before all of the heavy water had been absorbed, following which the light radiating from the axis became slightly brighter once again. Han Li continued this process without pause, infusing another ball of heavy water into the axis. One ball of second-level heavy water after another flew out of the heavenly water pouch before fusing into the heavy water true axis, and after a day and a night, the heavenly water pouch was finally emptied. The axis was glowing with dazzling blue radiance, and as it revolved, it was giving off astonishing power that was causing the nearby space to tremble incessantly. It was clear that the axis had become noticeably more powerful after absorbing the heavy water. Furthermore, unlike before, when the axis's spiritual connection with Han Li had been severed after it had absorbed too much first-level heavy water, even though the axis had absorbed close to a pond's worth of second-level heavy water, its spiritual connection with Han Li still remained completely unaffected. Han Li's gaze fell upon the 9 water Tao runes on the axis, as a contemplative look appeared on his face. The axis's improved tolerance capacity for heavy water was most likely due to the increase in the number of water Dao runes. This was certainly good news, as he wouldn't have to refine the axis with his nascent flame like before. 3 years later, Han Li was seated with his legs crossed on the coral island, and it was as if he had never moved from that spot in the past 3 years. At this moment, a ball of radiant blue light was hovering in front of him, and beside it was a ball of heavy water. Within the ball of blue light was the heavy water true axis, and even though it was merely hovering in midair, it was still giving off an incredibly heavy aura that was causing the nearby space to tremble and ripple, as if even the space itself were unable to bear its enormous weight. Han Li made a hand seal, and the heavy water true axis began to slowly revolve. The trembling of the surrounding space instantly became even more violent, while enormous waves were swept up over the nearby sea and gusts of ferocious wind were howling through the air. Thankfully, the coral island remained unaffected thanks to the restrictions that had been set up in advance. The blue light radiating from the heavy water true axis enveloped the surrounding heavy water before rapidly absorbing it. Once all of the heavy water was gone, Han Li made a beckoning motion, and the heavy water true axis instantly stopped revolving. The blue light that it was radiating also faded as it fell into Han Li's grasp. As soon as the axis ceased in its rotation, all of the unrest in the surrounding area also subsided, and it was as if nothing had ever happened here. The heavy water true axis looked no different from before aside from the fact that the 9 water Dao runes on its surface had become noticeably larger, and they resembled 9 blue swirling vortexes. Furthermore, they were giving off far more formidable water law fluctuations than before. The 9 bursts of law fluctuations came together to form a formidable stream, and in terms of sheer volume of law power, the axis possessed far more than any of Han Li's other immortal treasures. With this significantly enhanced heavy water true axis, Han Li's chances of survival in the infernal frost immortal manner would undoubtedly be increased. A hint of excitement appeared on his face as he examined the axis. Even though it had been absorbing second-level heavy water for the past 3 years, it showed no signs of slowing down, so it was clear that it could still absorb far more. With that in mind, Han Li patted the heavenly water pouch strapped to his waist. He still had quite a large quantity of first-level heavy water left. Up to this point, only around a third of the heavy water in the pouch had been converted into second-level heavy water before being absorbed by the heavy water true axis, and he couldn't help but wonder how much more the axis would be able to absorb. He promptly stowed the axis away before flipping a hand over to summon the crimson communication formation plate that had been given to him by Taoist Hu Yan. 3 years had already passed by, and according to what Taoist Hu Yan had said, the emergence of the immortal manner was imminent, yet Han Li hadn't been contacted at all. Has there been a change of plans? Initially, he hadn't actually been all that eager to go to this immortal manor. After all, there were many powers involved, including the northern glacial immortal region, and with so many golden immortals in the mix, it was going to be a very perilous trip. Even if there were many precious treasures inside the immortal manor, they were simply not worth risking his life over. However, after learning that Taoist Hu Yan possessed 3 more levels of the mantra axis scripture, he had no choice but to take this matter seriously, particularly after already having witnessed the tip of the iceberg when it came to the unfathomable power of the laws of time. With these thoughts running through his mind, he was considering whether he should be the one to contact Taoist Hu Yan, but he quickly abandoned the idea after some contemplation. Regardless of whether Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai had found the entrance to the immortal manor, he wasn't going to be able to help them. So the best thing for him to do was to remain patient and not disturb them. Even though the Black Wind Sea wasn't very safe at the moment, with their combined powers, They should be safe unless they encountered an opponent of Xiao Jinhin's caliber. With that in mind, Han Li stowed the formation plate away as a contemplative look appeared in his eyes. All of a sudden, he flipped a hand over to produce a storage pouch, which contained the remaining batches of Origin Void pill ingredients. After that, he stowed his heaven-controlling vial, then flew toward a certain direction, vanishing into the distance in the blink of an eye. Only after flying for several days, without pause, did Han Li stop on a deserted island countless kilometers away from Dark Vale Island. This place was already quite close to the soul-stirring winds, so there was a great deal of disturbance in the world's origin chi, coupled with howling winds and enormous waves. He paid no heed to the terrible environment as he released his spiritual sense throughout the surrounding area, and only after confirming that there were no potential hazards around did he withdraw his spiritual sense. Immediately thereafter, he swept a sleeve through the air to release a thick stack of formation tools. He then began to chant an incantation, and all of the formation tools flew to various parts of the island before vanishing out of sight. Moments later, a yellow cloud restriction emerged to encompass the entire island. In the blink of an eye, the island was completely isolated from the outside world, and it was as if it had become an independent space. Before long, a thick azure restriction had also been set up outside of the yellow cloud restriction, following which a white mist restriction appeared outside of the azure one. In the blink of an eye, 7 or 8 restrictions had taken shape to encompass the entire island, and the outermost one was a blue restriction with countless ripples surging over its surface. As soon as this restriction appeared, the entire island instantly vanished, blending in with the sea around it. These were the exact same restrictions that Han Li had used to protect his temporary cave abode, so he was able to set them up in a very well-rehearsed fashion. Han Li took a glance at his surroundings, then sat down with his legs crossed onto a plot of flat ground at the center of the island. He then raised a hand to release a burst of silver light, which transformed into a silver cauldron that landed in front of him. Immediately thereafter came another streak of silver light. This time, it was the flame of essence, and it landed on the underside of the cauldron. After preparing everything, Han Li flipped a hand over to produce the storage pouch from before, then swept a sleeve through the air to release a batch of Origin Void pill ingredients. After taking some time to compose himself, he immediately picked up one of the ingredients beside him before transferring it into the cauldron. He was planning to use the remaining time before the emergence of the Immortal manner to try and refine another Origin Void pill. He didn't know what the pill could be used for, but he speculated that Worm 3 was most likely planning to use it in the Immortal manner for some purpose. Initially, he was only a little curious about this pill, but seeing as he was also going to venture into the Immortal manner, he may as well refine one for himself. It certainly couldn't hurt to be well prepared, and perhaps the pill could come in useful. He had chosen to come all the way here to refine the pill, instead of refining it near Dark Vale Island. In light of the pill tribulation that had descended the last time, he had refined this pill. Thanks to his prior experience, he was already quite proficient in the refinement of the Origin Void pill, and he was flying through the steps with efficiency and precision. While Han Li was refining the Origin Void pill, a blue-robed middle-aged man was standing in midair above a nameless island countless kilometers away. The man was none other than Luo Qinghai, and at this moment his brows were tightly furrowed in agitation, in stark contrast with his normal composed and measured demeanor. Standing behind Luo Qinghai was the effeminate young man by the name of Nan Kemeng, and at this moment his brows were also tightly furrowed. Neither of them were saying anything, and the atmosphere was a little heavy. Right at this moment, a streak of blue light appeared on the distant horizon, and both of them immediately turned to that direction. The streak of blue light quickly arrived in front of Luo Qinghai and Nan Kameng, then faded to reveal a middle-aged man with a coarse beard. As soon as the man appeared, he cupped his fist to extend a salute, only for Luo Qinghai to raise a hand to stop him as he asked in an urgent voice, "No need for formalities. Have you discovered anything?" The bearded man was silent for a moment, then shook his head in response. "The 7 of us have scoured the areas that we're responsible for several times, but none of us have been able to find anything." Luo Qinghai's expression remained unchanged upon hearing this, but Nan Kameng could clearly detect that the air temperature had dropped slightly. "Should we continue, Palace Master?" the bearded man asked in a hesitant voice. "Yes, expand the scope of the search and make sure no detail is missed," Luo Qinghai instructed in a grim voice. "Yes, Palace Master," the bearded man replied, then flew away as a streak of light. "Master, is it possible that the information we've received is inaccurate, and the infernal frost immortal manor isn't actually going to be emerging in the Black Wind Sea?" Nan Kameng asked. "No, the signs of the immortal manor's imminent emergence have become more and more apparent in the Black Wind Sea in recent years, and the infernal frost scenic painting is also reacting here, so there's no mistaking it," Luo Qinghai replied with a shake of his head. "In that case, why are we unable to find the entrance? According to past records, as long as one has the painting, it shouldn't be difficult to find the entrance of the immortal manor," Nan Kameng said. "There's only one possibility," Luo Qinghai mused as his eyes narrowed slightly. "What is it?" Nan Kameng asked. Luo Qinghai offered on reply as he flipped a hand over to produce a small blue mirror, then cast an incantation seal into it, and immediately swelled to several times its original size while radiating dazzling blue light. A series of images rapidly flashed over the mirror, and only after a long while did the image stabilize, revealing a middle-aged man with a purplish-red face. "How are things going on your end, Junior Marshal Brother Fan?" Luo Qinghai asked, and he was speaking in a much warmer tone than when he was speaking with the bearded man from before. "Not well, I'm afraid. The people from the northern glacial Immortal Palace suddenly disappeared some time ago along with some important figures from Black Wind Island, and we've been unable to track them down up to this point," the man in the mirror replied with a shake of his head. Luo Qinghai's expression darkened even further upon hearing this. After hearing this exchange, Nan Kameng also realized what Luo Qinghai had been alluding to earlier, and he asked, "Master, are you speculating that the people from the northern glacial Immortal Palace have done something to prevent us from finding the entrance?" "It's most likely the case that Zhao Jinhen has sealed the entrance using some type of secret technique. Otherwise, it would have definitely already appeared by now, given that there's less than a year left before the emergence of the immortal manor," Luo Qinghai replied. "I don't know much about the infernal frost immortal manor, but I do know that the entrance of the immortal manor is a connective point between two realms, so there's no way it could be sealed discreetly in a short time," Nan Kameng said with furrowed brows. He was most likely somehow able to ascertain the location of the entrance in advance, then set up some restrictions there beforehand, Luo Qinghai harumphed coldly. An incredulous look appeared on Nan Kameng's face upon hearing this. "There's not much time left until the emergence of the immortal manor. What should we do, Palace Master?" the man in the mirror asked. "We have to find the entrance of the immortal manor no matter what. Keep searching for leads on the people from the northern glacial Immortal Palace and the master of Black Wind Island. There are so many of them, there's no way that they could have simply disappeared into thin air without leaving any traces behind. Employ some extreme measures if necessary," Luo Qinghai said in a meaningful voice. "Yes, Palace Master," the man in the mirror replied, then quickly vanished from the mirror, Luo Qinghai made a hand seal, and the blue mirror rapidly shrank down before flying back up his sleeve. After that, he remained standing on the spot for a moment longer, then abruptly swept a sleeve through the air to envelop both himself and Nan Kemeng before flying away into the distance. Meanwhile, there were around a dozen figures standing in midair above a certain area in the Black Wind Sea. All of them were dressed in black robes. They were members of the Dawn Fall sect. They were led by none other than the zombie-like Feng Tiandu and the master of the Dawn Fall sect. Aside from those two, 3 of the other Dawn Fall sect cultivators present were also golden immortals. One of them was extremely tall and rotund, resembling a mountain of flesh from afar. The other 2 had much more normal figures, but the coloration of their skin was very peculiar. One of them had skin that was as black as ink, and in dim light it would have been difficult to even discern his facial features from one another. In contrast, the other man was as pale as a sheet, and even his hair and eyebrows were completely white and devoid of color. As for the rest of the Dawn Fall sect cultivators, all of them were at the mid or late true immortal stage. The portly golden immortal turned to Feng Tiandu and the Dawn Fall sect master as he reported, "According to our search, not only have the northern glacial immortal palace cultivators disappeared from Black Wind Island, Island Master Lu Jun, and several of his most important subordinates have also gone missing. After performing a soul search technique on one of the administrators, I learned that they had suddenly disappeared several days ago. It's just as you say, senior martial brother. Zhao Jinhin has most likely somehow concealed the entrance of the Immortal Manor," the Dawn Fall sect master said with a grim expression. "Looks like we were too careless. This emergence of the Immortal Palace is more significant than previous ones, so I should have predicted that Zhao Jinhin would take some measures to prevent others from getting in," Feng Tiandu sighed. "I also discovered that aside from our Dawn Fall sect, there are several other powers that are also searching for the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace cultivators," the portly golden immortal continued. "Oh, how many are there?" Feng Tiandu asked. "Around 2 or 3, but all of them are very alert, so I didn't dare to get too close, and I wasn't able to find out too much. However, I'm certain that I spotted Western Extreme Palace Master Qi Kan of the Vast Flow Palaces, 5 extreme palaces among them," the rotund golden immortal replied. "Seeing as we were able to determine that the Northern Glacial Immortal Palace had to have concealed the entrance of the Immortal Manor, the other powers must have been able to arrive at the same conclusion as well," Feng Tiandu said. "How could Zhao Jinhin do something so deplorable? He's trying to keep everyone out of the Immortal Manor. What do we do now, senior martial brother?" the Dawn Fall sect master asked as he turned to Feng Tiandu with tightly furrowed brows. "There's still some time left until the Immortal Manor emerges, and we have to find the entrance before then no matter what. Otherwise, if Zhao Jinhin obtains what he's searching for, then our Dawn Fall sect will be at risk for suffering the same fate as the Blaze Dragon Dao," Feng Tiandu said in a cold voice. In Black Wind City, in a room in an inn at the center of the city, sat a man and a woman. They were none other than Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai in disguise, and there was a lavish feast laid out before them, but neither of them showed any interest in it, and both appeared quite agitated. "I didn't think Zhao Jinhin would have a trick like this up his sleeve. We don't have much time left, Hu Yan. What should we do?" Yun Nai asked with a hint of anxiety in her voice. "It looks like continuing to wait in Black Wind City isn't going to do us any good, so let's go search elsewhere. In any case, we have to find the entrance of the Immortal Manor no matter what," Taoist Hu Yan said with a determined expression. "But we're only 2 people, and the Black Wind Sea is so vast. How are we supposed to find the entrance on our own? Should we call upon Li Feiyu to help us? It most likely won't make a difference, but I suppose we can always give that a try as a last resort, Yun Nai proposed. There's no need for that. This region isn't very safe at the moment, so we should avoid contact with others as much as possible. As for how we're going to find the entrance, I have some ideas, Taoist Hu Yan said as he rose to his feet, then made his way out of the room. Yun Nai knew that once Taoist Hu Yan made up his mind, there was no dissuading him, so she could only heave a faint sigh before following him out of the room. On a rather desolate-looking island elsewhere in the Black Wind Sea, a group of white-robed cultivators were gathered. The group consisted of around a dozen people, all of whom were standing in small groups of 2 or 3 in silence. Judging from the way that they were arranged, their leader appeared to be a square-faced elderly man standing at the center of the group, and his aura indicated that he was a golden immortal, while everyone else around him were true immortals. At this moment, all of them were looking around with anticipation in their eyes, seemingly waiting for someone or something. Sometime later, a streak of silver light appeared on the distant horizon, and it was traveling at a rapid speed, arriving near the island in the blink of an eye. The streak of silver light contained a silver-robed woman, and the square-faced elderly man immediately approached her with a fawning smile on his face as he greeted, "Welcome, fellow Taoist." A faint smile appeared on the silver-robed woman's face as she asked, "Have you made any discoveries?" "Not at the moment, but even though our Zhu clan moved out of the Black Wind Sea many years ago, we still have many contacts here, and I've already sent out people to get in touch with these contacts while also helping out in the search. So I'm sure we'll find something soon," the square-faced elderly man replied. The silver-robed woman's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this, and she said, "There's not much time left before the emergence of the immortal manor, so we have to do everything in our power to find the entrance. Otherwise, all of us will have come here for naught." "Rest assured, fellow Taoist, we're doing everything in our power," the square-faced elderly man immediately replied. The silver-robed woman nodded in response, then spoke to the elderly man for a while longer before flying away as a streak of silver light. A long-faced man swept a sleeve through the air to conjure up a white light barrier around everyone, then approached the square-faced elderly man as he said, "Esteemed patriarch, that woman's cultivation base is far superior to ours, and she claims that she wants to work with our Zhu clan to venture into the infernal frost immortal manor together. But is she really being earnest and forthcoming with us? She tries to hide her malice behind that smile of hers, but I can tell she's not a kind person. I'm sure she won't turn on us. Her cultivation base is indeed far superior to ours, but she's on her own, while all of the other powers that have come to the Black Wind Sea have superior numbers on their side, so it makes sense that she would want to secure some allies," the square-faced elderly man replied. The long-faced man didn't say anything, but the concern on his face didn't diminish at all. "Rest assured, with the snow silkworm formation from the 10 of you and myself, we'll be able to ensure at least self-preservation. Even if she wants to use us, it's not like she can interfere with what we do once we enter the immortal manor," the square-faced elderly man said with a faint smile, seemingly quite pleased with himself. The long-faced man's expression eased slightly upon hearing this, and he smiled as he said, "You're right, esteemed patriarch. It seems I was just excessively cautious." Meanwhile, the silver-robed woman was racing over the sea, and there was a longhorn beetle perched on her shoulder. Its body was a pristine white color, as if it had been carved out of jade, and at this moment, the voice of the square-faced elderly man was coming out of its mouth. "It's not like she can interfere with what we do once we enter the immortal manor." "Pathetic little bugs," the silver-robed woman scoffed to herself with a cold sneer. "I suppose I'll spare you for now, seeing as you're still useful to me." The silver-robed woman stowed the white longhorn beetle away, then began making a string of hand seals, and a cloud of white mist flew out of her sleeve. The mist then quickly dispersed in all directions, revealing itself to be a swarm of tiny semi-transparent white insects. A core formation stage eel demon beast was swimming through the sea when it came into contact with a few of these white insects, and the insects immediately vanished into its body like water droplets into cotton. But the eel demon beast remained completely oblivious as it continued to swim through the water. Similar scenes were unfolding across the entire nearby area at the moment, with these white insects entering the bodies of all types of marine demon beasts and even ordinary fish as they spread far and wide at a rapid speed. Meanwhile, a group of around a dozen cultivators were seated in a circular formation on a calm area of the sea. There were 3 bald men hovering in front of the group, all 3 of whom were at the golden immortal stage, while the others were all true immortals. Each of these cultivators had a small blue flag hovering in front of them, with countless runes visible on each flag. All of the flags were giving off water law fluctuations, indicating that they were immortal treasures, and they appeared to be part of the same set. These cultivators were collectively chanting an incantation while making a constant string of hand seals, and dazzling blue light was radiating from the flags before coming together to form an enormous blue light barrier that resembled a huge mirror. Each of the 3 bald golden immortals had a palm outstretched, sending a pillar of blue light surging into the giant mirror, and all of a sudden, the mirror shattered into several dozen smaller mirrors amid an audible crack. Each mirror depicted a different setting, varying from under the sea or in the sky or on an island. Different images were constantly flashing over these mirrors, and all of the cultivators present were scrutinizing the mirrors intently to see what was happening in all of those places. All of the major powers that had come to the Black Wind Sea were naturally feeling extremely agitated by their inability to track down the Immortal Manor's location, and all of them were searching frantically. Initially, they tried to cover their tracks as much as possible, but as time passed and they became more desperate, they gradually began to throw caution to the wind, not bothering to keep their search secretive any longer. With so many formidable foreign cultivators suddenly appearing in the Black Wind Sea, all of the local powers were left feeling quite uneasy, and more islands were going into lockdown.